Hello everyone, today we will learn about another case. The case of Clelia Medina. Early in the morning on Sunday, February 17, 2008, a man was walking with his dog when he suddenly noticed that the dog was attracted to something strange on the ground. Looking closely, he realized it was a series of drops forming a path. He began to follow them, moving parallel to the canal, not far from Lambersart, France. The drops continued, leading him to the very shore where he noticed a body half submerged in the water. It was swollen and very pale. The man immediately reported it to the police. In the name of law enforcement, forensic experts began to carefully examine the area and the body itself. However, there was nothing that could help identify the female victim. It was not possible to find a handbag that might have contained documents, a mobile phone, or bank cards. The body was taken for an autopsy, and the police continued to investigate the area around the canal for any clues about the identity of the victim. While the medical examiner was working in his office, detectives checked the databases of missing persons to find anything that could help identify the body. In this area, no recent disappearances had been recorded. When it became obvious that the unidentified victim could not be recognized, forensic scientists began searching the canal bank for clues indicating the identity of the deceased or the perpetrator. In the relatively small area where the body was found, cigarette butts and anything that could contain human DNA were collected. To ensure that nothing was missed, a team of divers was called in to check the bottom of the canal. This decision turned out to be correct. One diver managed to retrieve a car jack from the bottom, found just a meter away from the body. The jack, belonging to a standard set for a wing car, had a serial number indicating it was used in a vehicle produced in 1997. It had been in the water for quite a long time, so traces from its surface could have washed away. However, during the examination, human bloodstains were found. They continued to collect data. Initially, it was believed that the victim had been strangled, as characteristic marks remained on her neck. However, the forensic expert concluded that the cause of death was multiple strong blows to the head with a blunt object. The location and shape of the marks resembled those made by a car jack. There were suggestions that the girl could have died in a road accident, but the longer they attempted to prove this, the less plausible the theory seemed. It was soon decided to abandon this idea. It clearly indicated a methodical beating after which the body was simply thrown into the water. A toxicological examination showed that the victim was either intoxicated from alcohol or under the influence of prohibited substances. The deceased was fully dressed, and no signs of abuse were found. At the same time, there were no marks on her hands that would indicate she had fought for her life. The attack had likely come as a surprise to her, and she was unable to defend herself. According to the forensic expert, she died around 5 a.m. The police had only one clue that could help solve the mystery of her identity: a small stamp on her palm that had miraculously not washed away in the water. Such stamps are given to club visitors at the entrance, allowing security to recognize them without the need to check passes or flyers. Typically, these stamps are unique to each establishment and are not replicated. It was quickly discovered that the victim had visited the Buccaneer Club located nearby shortly before her death. Detectives arrived at the club, immediately spoke with the administration and employees, providing them with a description of the deceased. Two young men recognized the girl because she occasionally attended the disco, but no one knew her name. The detectives managed to access the recordings from the CCTV cameras. Thanks to that, the victim was identified. She had arrived at the club the day before she was found in the canal, apparently leaving Buccaneer around 3 a.m. and being killed by 5 a.m. What happened to her between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. remained unknown. The police spoke to regular patrons and staff in the hope that someone recognized her from the CCTV footage, but no valuable clues about her identity emerged. So far, no missing persons reports had been filed. The police were left with only one option to identify the deceased: to hold a press conference and appeal to the public through the media. Detectives provided a detailed description of the victim and showed footage from the club's CCTV cameras. Within a few hours, a woman admitting that she was the mother of 18-year-old Clelia Medina. She reported that her daughter had gone to the club about a day before these events and had not returned or been in touch. She immediately became concerned. Relatives and friends had no idea where Clelia might have spent the night. No one had seen Clelia after visiting the club, which caused anxiety and prompted her mother to search for her. Approximately 36 hours had passed when she managed to contact the local police station in Lille, but received the standard excuse that law enforcement officers did not want to waste time looking for a girl who had simply gone on a spree after the club and was likely spending time with friends or a boyfriend. When she saw a news program about the police announcing the discovery of a body and the terrible circumstances surrounding the tragedy, she initially tried to dismiss any bad thoughts about it possibly being her daughter. However, the worry persisted. She literally felt that something bad had happened to her daughter and feared that it was Clelia's body that had been found in the canal. She acted extremely worried and was very agitated, providing somewhat confused information due to her emotional state. Therefore, the police decided to verify the information with Clelia's cousin, who had been with Clelia that evening. The young man confirmed some of the details provided by Clelia's mother. He helped to clarify valuable information such as the clothing and piercing locations that Clelia had. The victim's identity was almost completely matched. Clelia's mother was notified of the coincidence and was invited to identify the body. All doubts were finally dispelled. The mother was shocked by her daughter's tragic death, and she immediately began to cry. She struggled to understand who could have done this, as her daughter was an ordinary girl who did not associate with problematic people. According to her cousin, they had planned to go to Buccaneer Club together, the seal of which was found on her hand. He described his relationship with Clelia as very friendly and warm. They communicated well, supported each other. That evening, everyone was in good spirits. From the very beginning, Clelia's mother had been worried about her daughter attending the party. She felt strongly that Clelia should not go. To calm her mother, Clelia explained that they would not be walking home alone and that everything would be fine. Despite the fact that her cousin took her to the club, he did not intend to stay there long. Clelia managed to reassure her mother by telling her that her ex-boyfriend, 19-year-old Julian Saley, was supposed to drive her home. The whole family knew him well and trusted him. Julian Saley and Clelia had been in a relationship for about a year, which had ended a couple of months before Clelia's death. As Clelia's mother noted, even after the breakup, they continued to communicate as friends. Law enforcement officers decided to check the records of telephone conversations, which verified that Clelia had indeed called her ex-boyfriend when she left the club. However, the police did not have time to visit his home, as he came to the station on his own initiative to talk to the investigators. Julian was eager to help because he was worried about what had happened. In his statement, he emphasized that Clelia had contacted him after he left the cinema. He promptly went to the club, where he picked her up in his car in the parking lot. They spent some time together at his house, but at about 4:30 in the morning, Clelia headed home. Julian believed that she could have been attacked during this time. The police immediately questioned why he did not drive Clelia home at such a late hour. He explained that it was only a short walk left to get home, as the houses were located close together. It was already getting light, he was very tired and drunk, so cannot take her home. Clelia herself did not want to impose on anyone and was not afraid for her safety. Unfortunately, Julian simply went to bed and turned off his mobile phone to avoid being disturbed. Until he woke up, he could not reach Clelia but did not think much of it, believing that she could be spending time with someone new, as there was no romantic relationship between them anymore. However, upon learning about the tragedy in the Medina family, Julian felt compelled to help with the investigation, so provided his testimony. The detectives, however, immediately suspected that he might not just want to help. Such behavior is often seen in murderers attempting to divert suspicion from themselves. Thus, they decided not to let him leave too quickly, hoping he would either incriminate himself or provide genuine assistance in the investigation. Suspicion grew stronger as Julian reacted very calmly to the details of the crime. He did not show any emotions when looking at the disfigured image, and he appeared neither upset nor shocked. His lack of reaction to the details of his ex-girlfriend's death combined with the fact that he was the last person to see her, made him a person of interest to the detectives. It is known that in such cases, exes are often involved, who kill out of jealousy, resentment, or revenge. To establish or refute this, the investigators asked Julian to show them his car. The detective specifically did not mention the jack that had been found in the canal. He agreed to this request without hesitation. According to his confession, he arrived at the police station in the same car in which he had driven Clelia from the club to his home. The policeman went out into the street with him, and in the parking lot, they found a notch indicating the year of manufacture of the car matched the jack. As soon as the door was opened, they felt a very strong smell of cleaning products. The interior was excessively clean for a young guy. It seemed that a very thorough cleaning had been carried out recently. Nevertheless, Julian immediately justified himself by saying that he had bought a new car only 10 days prior, and the previous owner had cleaned it well before selling it. The police were most interested in the possibility of blood being present. Perhaps Julian could have attacked Clelia in his car or transported the body after the attack. When the mat in the trunk was lifted, they found several suspicious dark red drops that were collected for further analysis. However, none of these stains belonged to Clelia. Nevertheless, Julian continued to be considered the main suspect. It was believed that this was an attack based on passion, so the killer must have known the victim well. Furthermore, the make of the car matched the jack with the jack was found at the bottom of the canal. Julian seemed ideal as a suspect based on all the criteria. After, they found one valuable clue, a blood stain on one of Julian's sneakers. After examination, it was possible to prove that the blood belonged to Clelia, but it was not possible to date it with precision. Julian insisted that the stain appeared by chance when Clelia had a nosebleed about a month before the tragedy. However, his words could not be confirmed or refuted, so this evidence turned out to be indirect. Even Clelia's family was sure that Julian could not have done this. He had always been a very nice guy. Clelia's mother believed wholeheartedly that he was not capable of murder. She commented that Clelia was almost crazy about Julian based on his appearance. He was very kind, loving, and gave Clelia many gifts. However, their relationship was not entirely smooth. They often argued. Julian as an accomplished young man for his age. He grew up in a strict but loving family in Lille, France. From an early age, he was interested in sports, especially football, which he played with his father. He was not prone to violence and avoided fights, despite being in perfect shape. However, he was forced to drop out of school because of football, wanting to build a sports career, and simply chose training over textbooks. His parents supported their son's decision, especially since he was mature enough for his age. At the same time, they described him as charming but very jealous. They mentioned that he could become upset over a random photo of a stranger on the internet that Clelia was looking at. As their relationship progressed, Julian became more and more jealous. Due to such tumultuous dynamics, they eventually broke up. Despite the tensions, they continued to maintain friendly relations, and everything seemed normal. Except for the circumstantial evidence against Julian, there was no concrete proof. He was released pending further investigation. Then, Julian was arrested and charged with Clelia's murder. He spent about a year in prison, but his lawyer managed to get him released before his trial. Julian repeatedly appealed, claiming there was insufficient evidence to convict him, and was released on bail. However, this lasted until 2011, when his formal trial began. A rather controversial trial lay ahead. From the very beginning, the situation was tense, partly because Clelia's family had changed their opinion about Julian over the lengthy investigation period. They became convinced, based on several dubious facts, that the deceased's ex-boyfriend was indeed a criminal. Clelia's family now demanded punishment for the supposed killer. At this stage, it was necessary to assess the mental health of the suspect. In June 2008, Julian was visited by an expert psychiatrist who noted no deviations. Julian willingly made contact and described in detail the events related to Clelia. He admitted that there had indeed been several conflicts which ended in slaps to the face. Although he did not think this was normal, he justified himself, citing jealousy regarding Clelia and claiming that she had stolen from him multiple times. After the examination, the specialist concluded that Julian was completely in his right mind and capable of appearing in court. Tension was literally in the air. The defense team escalated the situation to the point where a fight broke out right in the courtroom. Several people were slightly injured, so the trial was postponed because of this unpleasant incident and the subsequent bureaucratic red tape. Everything was delayed for another year until 2012. From February 2009 until the start of the trial in June 2012, Julian lived with his paternal aunts near Paris. She immediately noticed how angry he was. At first, they thought it was connected to the slander against him. However, his discontent grew as the trial approached. Meanwhile, the Medina family accused Julian's lawyer of unnecessarily dragging out the proceedings, which only heightened tensions. The first witnesses began to speak at the meetings. There was a mutual friend of Clelia and Julian who recalled that all three of them had once been driving in a car together after their romantic relationship had ended. Julian had even started dating a new girl, who happened to be one of Clelia's close friends. This situation made she very upset and jealous. Despite their breakup, a conflict ensued between them, which even escalated to physical confrontation. They exchanged blows. At one point, Clelia even attempted to jump out of the moving car, but Julian managed to pull her back inside. By the time the car reached her friend's house, Clelia finally exited and continued yelling at Julian from the street. He tried to calm her down, but she simply waved her hand dismissively and left the scene. This friend was convinced this was not an isolated incident, as outbursts of jealousy and aggression were repeated throughout their relationship. In addition to this event, Clelia's parents recalled several instances during family vacations with Julian where he lost control. They once caught him walking around the apartment with a weapon. However, he had managed to convince Clelia's relatives that it was just a failed joke. They now understood the situation was much more serious. From the very beginning, Clelia had been in great danger. Another friend of Julian recounted an incident where, in a fit of rage, he began to choke one of his girlfriends. The once pleasant, sociable, and good-natured Julian was now portrayed as a monster capable of losing control at any moment. So, the change in the Medina family's attitude toward him did not seem strange. Julian had lied about the time. He told the police that Clelia left his house at 4:30 a.m. Detectives managed to track their mobile phones and prove that they were still together at 5 a.m., which is when Clelia was believed to have died. Subsequently, Clelia's phone unexpectedly turned off at 5:10 a.m. Previously, during an interrogation, Julian said that attempted to contact Clelia again but could not get a response. Detectives believed the call to his ex-girlfriend was made intentionally to create an alibi. Shortly thereafter, Julian's phone also turned off for several hours. Investigators suspected he deliberately turned off his devices to avoid being tracked. Despite all the circumstantial evidence against him, Julian continued to insist on his innocence. His lawyer argued that none of this evidence proved his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Throughout the investigation, detectives tried to extract a confession from Julian, but he steadfastly maintained his innocence. The pressure from authorities led him to feel embittered. He claimed that the persecution caused him to face difficulties in real life and to suffer from insults, unfounded accusations. Phone records revealed something intriguing. Julian's new girlfriend also tried to contact Clelia shortly before the murder. At first, she did not disclose any details as to why she tried to contact Clelia at all. However, in 2011, the girl spoke to detectives and made a rather dubious statement. According to her, she felt guilty that Clelia was dead. The reason for her fears stemmed from the fact that, as a close friend of Clelia, she was dating Julian. This clearly caused great discontent for his ex-girlfriend, who took every opportunity to contact him. On that fateful night, Julian's new girlfriend decided to act on her feelings. She did not like Clelia as such attention directed at the guy. She believed that this was the impetus for another conflict between the exes, which ended tragically. When the police received this statement, they were puzzled and decided to explore this new details. The application ended up at the station, and detectives tried to find out if it was possible that she was an accomplice. They insisted that Julian's new girlfriend may have unintentionally provoked the attack but did not pursue such a goal intentionally. According to her, she had been afraid to admit it because she feared her boyfriend's reaction. The neck of the deceased showed clear signs of strangulation, as if her throat had been squeezed with bare hands. Apparently, the victim could not have been killed in this way, so the criminal used a metal jack from the car. Although it was inconvenient, it quickly became the instrument that ended the innocent girl's life. The killer inflicted a large number of blows to her head and face, which proved fatal. The degree of cruelty was astounding. He broke her facial bones. The prosecutor addressed the jury, stating that leaving such a dangerous person at large was a crime. Despite the circumstantial nature of the evidence, the prosecution managed to prove the defendant's guilt. The prosecution's witnesses appeared scared as they recounted their experiences with the real Julian. The jury found Julian salely guilty of premeditated murder. As he left the courtroom, he turned to the victim's family and said something that sounded like a threat. From the very moment Julian found himself behind bars, he began writing endless appeals to challenge the sentence, insisting that he was a victim of bias and incompetence. Probably feeling his helplessness and unbearable situation, he even insulted one of the judges in writing, subsequently refusing to retract his comments, insisting he was a victim of governmental arbitrariness. However, all his requests were rejected. While in prison, he was involved in another incident related to his inability to control his aggression. Using a homemade sharpener, he threatened to kill one of the prison guards, whom he took hostage for several minutes. Julian was eventually overpowered and neutralized. Now, he remains behind bars. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Ronald Platt. On July 28, 1996, in South England, Captain John Kopek and his son prepared for a day of fishing on their Brixham trawler, Mulcahy. After an unproductive day, they decided to venture further into an area known as the Roughs. They lowered their net into the water and waited. Soon, they felt the familiar pull of a heavy catch. John thought they had caught a big fish and decided to bring the net back to the surface. However, it wasn't a fish. John and his son were shocked and a dead body fell onto their deck. John quickly notified the Brixham Coast Guard. The body was badly decomposed, indicating it had been in the ocean for a while. Although fish had nibbled on it, the man was dressed neatly in a long-sleeved shirt, corduroy pants, and brown shoes. The police observed that his pockets were emptied, and he had no identification. The only distinguishing features were a badly smudged tattoo on his right hand and a Rolex watch on his wrist. The body was transferred to the medical examiner's office in Devon. It was estimated that the man was between 40 and 50 years old. The tattoo looked like a group of stars. The only serious injury was on his head. It was not fatal and, along with other bruises, appeared to be consistent with having been dragged along the seabed before being brought onto the boat. His lungs were filled with water. It was determined that he died from drowning, something common in the area given that the English Channel is right off the coast. The police suspected he might have fallen overboard during one of the ferry crossings. The only other way to identify him was through dental records. If he was a British citizen, his records would be available, so the examiner proceeded with this method. However, it would take some time. By chance, a mortuary technician noticed the man's watch. It was a Rolex Oyster self-winding watch, fully waterproof and needing motion to stay active for 48 hours. They could trace the ownership if it was genuine. By examining the watch, the investigators could determine that the man drowned on July 20, 1996, because the calendar feature showed the date as July 22. They also found a serial number hidden between the strap and the watch face. This number was sent to Rolex to check if the watch was authentic and if it had been serviced by the owner. Several weeks later, investigators identified him as Ronald Joseph Platt through Rolex records. The medical examiner confirmed this with dental records. Ronald Joseph Platt was a 51-year-old TV repairman. Records show he was born in Calgary, Canada, in 1945 before his family relocated to Britain. Ronald was unmarried and had previously served as a soldier in the British Army for his national service. Close friends described him as a quiet, introverted man. He loves his native Canada very much. He is also passionate about electronics and precision engineering, which led him to purchase a Rolex in Germany in 1967. It became one of his most treasured possessions. And his ex-partners noted that he would not even remove his watch to shower. With this information, investigators needed to determine Ronald how he ended up entangled in a fishing trawler. Detective Constable Ian Clenahan from the Devon and Cornwall Police was assigned to the case right from the start. Police discovered that Ronald's last known address was in Essex, far from where his body was found. Clenahan contacted the Essex Police Department for further investigation. Inspector Peter Redmond offered to go to the address to help investigate the case. When Peter visited, the house was empty. He contacted the owner, who explained that the previous occupant had moved out some time ago, but provided the detective with a reference letter. The letter contained the forwarding address and contact number for someone named David Davis. Upon calling the provided number, Peter was able to reach David. The detective inquired about the relationship between Ronald and David before explaining that the body they discovered in Devon was possibly that of his friend. David agreed to visit the Essex police. Peter met with him and found he to be friendly and confident. However, David was quiet and didn't ask many questions about Ronald's death or how it was discovered. When asked, David mentioned that he and Ronald had been friends for several years. He told Peter that he hadn't seen Ronald in over 3 months. The last time they met, he had lent Ronald money to start an electrical business in France. David believed that Ronald had been living in France all this time. During the interview, Peter discovered that the tattoo on Ronald's hand was a maple leaf, the national symbol of Canada. David explained Ronald's affection for Canada. After sharing all the information he had, he left the station, promising to send Detective Peter a photo of Ronald. A few days later, Peter received the photo as promised. The Essex police had been able to conclude the investigation, arriving at the theory that Ronald had fallen overboard and drowned in the canal. This matched the story told by David. It had simply been an unfortunate accident. While the Essex case was being closed, Detective Constable Ian Clenahan needed to resolve the loose ends on his side. He tried to contact David several times, but was unsuccessful. So, he turned to his colleague Peter in Essex for help in getting in touch with David. Then Peter agreed and visited David. The meeting took place in the rural area of Essex, where there were only 4 houses, each with a name instead of a traditional number. Peter knocked on the first door, and an elderly couple answered. When they asked Peter whom he was looking for, he gave them the name David Davis. The couple informed Peter that their neighbor was not Davis, but Ronald Platt. They then described Ronald to Peter, and he realized that it was the same man he had met before. Redmond realized something was amiss. He reached out to Clenahan in Devon and shared how, by pure luck, he knew more another part of the story. Detectives from both areas now understood that the situation was more complicated than at first. Peter turned his attention to collecting details about David, the man impersonating his deceased friend, Ronald. Then Peter returned to visit the elderly couple he knew as Frank and Aubrey. They recounted the story of Ronald Platt, his much younger wife, and their 2 young children. Ronald and his family often vacationed in Devon because they had a yacht there, but the specific name of the place couldn't be recalled. In Devon, Clennahan began reviewing the evidence and started by interviewing old witnesses. His first visit was to John. When questioned, John explained that the net used had pulled up a 10-pound anchor along with Ronald's body. John had given the anchor to a friend, who then passed it to his mother to sell. Luckily, the anchor wasn't sold, allowing investigators to recover and preserve it as evidence. Clennahan's next step was to interview people who knew Ronald. He reached out to Ronald's brother Brian, who mentioned Elaine Boyes, Ronald's former partner of 13 years. Investigators visited Elaine and uncovered the link between Ronald and David. Elaine had met David in 1991 while she was working as a receptionist at a fine arts auction house in Harrogate, England. She described David as tall, engaging, and charming. They then talked about David moving to Yorkshire and the subject turned to jobs. David wanted Elaine to join his company. Elaine mentioned it would be temporary because she and Ronald were planning to move to Canada. David, trying to win her over, suggested he could help them save money for the move. Soon, Elaine started working as his executive assistant and later introduced Ronald to David, leading the two men to quickly become friends. Ronald and Elaine was fascinated by David's boastful stories and admired his luxurious lifestyle. David offered them to become directors of his company, the Cavendish Corporation. Initially, Elaine was hesitant about the offer. David explained why he didn't want his name associated with the company. He claimed that his ex-wife was a wealthy doctor in New York who continued to demand alimony from him. At this point, Ronald and Elaine had come to trust David and believed that David was actually trying to keep distance himself from his ex-wife. David sends Elaine and Ronald to Europe to negotiate deals on his behalf and gradually draws them into his plot. On Christmas Day 1992, David invited the couple to spend the day with him and his daughter Noelle. After a satisfying meal, they sat down to exchange gifts. Elaine received a card titled "The Ultimate Gift." David had promised to buy Elaine and Ronald 2 tickets to Canada if they used them before February 1993. Elaine felt overwhelmed by the short notice, but Ronald was ecstatic. His lifelong dream of returning to Canada was coming true, thanks to the generosity of David, a man he considered a true friend. David persuaded them that it was better to begin their new life sooner rather. He quickly started preparing for their departure. David suggested to both Elaine and Ronald that they should have stamps made of their signatures, in case he needed to sign any documents urgently. David would also keep their driver's licenses with him in case he needed to prove their identity. This request wasn't difficult for the couple because they trusted David, who had just helped them get started. So, in February 1993, Elaine and Ronald flew to Canada to start their new lives. Canada did not provide the better opportunities Elaine and Ronald had hoped for. They arrived in the country during winter, found little work, and financial struggles quickly led to relationship issues. They attempted to overcome these challenges, but the increasing tension caused them to grow apart. 5 months later, Elaine went back to England to be a bridesmaid at her sister's wedding, with no plans to return to Canada. David, now a family friend, was invited to the wedding. At the event, he spoke with Elaine and asked about Ronald. He was saddened to learn that she would not be going back to Canada and that her relationship with Ronald had ended. David attempted to persuade Elaine to reconsider and give Ronald another chance in Canada. When she declined, David suddenly changed tactics. He quickly arranged to move himself, leaving Elaine only with his mobile number. Their friendship eventually faded, and the calls stopped as well. Elaine and Ronald were no longer in touch. After leaving Canada, she had not communicated with her ex-lover Ronald or her former close friend David. So, when David reached out to Elaine late in 1996, she didn't think much of the unexpected conversation, as they had little to say to each other after such a long time. David did not mention Ronald, and that was the end of it. He did not tell her that Ronald had died. After the interview, Elaine told the police she suspected David might have been involved in Ronald's death. Elaine provided important clues about the relationship between David and Ronald, but investigators needed more concrete evidence. They started interviewing witnesses after the wedding in Harrogate. David quickly fled with his family to Devon, where he began using the name Ronald Platt. He introduced his pregnant daughter as his wife, sometimes calling her Elaine Boys and other times Noelle Platt. It was well known that he owned a yacht, which raised further suspicion. Witnesses reported seeing Ronald and David together a month before Ronald's body was found. They are said to have booked rooms at the Steam Packet Inn as brothers, David and Ronald Platt. By this point, the police were certain that David was lying about Ronald and what he knew about his death. They just needed one more piece of evidence. By examining David's mobile phone records, they found that calls were made from the same area where the medical examiner estimated Ronald had drowned. The Essex police planned a sting operation to arrest David on suspicion of Ronald's murder. They waited for him at the Chelmsford train station after receiving a tip-off from Elaine, who had arranged to meet David for coffee. However, David managed to slip away. Peter then was decided to drive by David's family home. In that place, Peter noticed activity, but he did not act immediately and requested reinforcements. Peter was assumed that David might be armed as they prepared to take action. A taxi arrived in the driveway, and David quickly escaped when the taxi sped off. The police chased him and eventually arrested him, pointing a gun at him. David surrendered without incident. What the police did not know was that this was just the tip of the iceberg. David was arrested, and his fingerprints were taken. Searching them in an international database revealed another twist to an already tangled plot. The fingerprints were identified as belonging to a man named Albert Johnson Walker, who was ranked number 4 on Interpol's wanted list and was Canada's most wanted fugitive. Albert's story starts in Canada, 6 years before Ronald's body was found in the Atlantic Ocean. Born in Hamilton, Ontario, on August 9, 1945, Albert always had big dreams. Although he dropped out of high school, but he worked as a bank teller and spent much of his free time socializing in Ontario. It was at a social event that he met his ex-wife, Barbara MacDonald. Albert proposed to Barbara after just a 4-day romance, and they got married in 1968. They quickly began their family, having 3 daughters and 4 sons, and raised them in Paris, Ontario. After years of assisting others with financial solutions, Albert, along with Barbara, launched a freelance bookkeeping business. The business flourished, and within a decade, it grew to 6 branches with over 30 employees. Friends were eager to invest with them, but Albert was secretly diverting their money to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Eventually, problems began to surface. Albert's marriage ended due to his numerous affairs. The people he swindled money from began to get suspicious, so in 1990 Walker decided to leave before the situation became more tense. He told friends he was taking their 15-year-old daughter, Sheena, on a skiing trip to Europe, and used this as a cover to escape. Barbara realized what was happening and, concerned for her daughter's safety, reported her as a missing person. The police tried to chase him, but they lost track of him in London. He assumed a new identity, taken from a client, and started going by David Wallace Davis, while Sheena was renamed Noelle. Although he managed to evade the authorities, the name David Davis was still linked to his true identity. He needed a new identity, and he had the perfect opportunity when he met Ronald Platt. Ronald had a very small circle of friends and was obsessed with living in Canada. Albert took advantage of this information. Everything was set in motion and Albert finally got the identity he needed. However, the plans fell apart when Ronald contacted Albert in 1995. Life in Canada wasn't as he had imagined it. Ronald informed Albert that he would return to Essex to settle near David. The solid foundation Albert was building started to show signs of trouble. Having two individuals named Ronald Platt in the same area with identical birth details was problematic for Albert. So, he devised a plan. He bought a yacht called Lady Jane and took his family and Ronald to Totnes in Devon to celebrate its launch. During the visit, they bought a new 10-pound anchor, which later turned out to be crucial evidence in an investigation. After returning to Essex, Albert invited Ronald back to Devon for another weekend, just two friends enjoying the coast and fishing. Albert sailed the Lady Jane out into open waters, far from the view of anyone on shore. He then struck Ronald on the head with the anchor, rendering him unconscious. Albert searched Ronald's pockets to remove any identification, secured the anchor to Ronald's belt, and threw him overboard. Albert believes it was the perfect murder. However, Albert made one critical mistake. He forgot to remove Ronald's Rolex watch, which eventually unveiled the meticulously planned crime. Albert's trial began in 1998, with evidence presented in court, including the anchor found entangled with Ronald's body in a net. Forensic experts determined that the head injury matched the shape of the anchor. Traces of zinc were found on the pants belt Ronald's, matching the zinc on the anchor. Albert had used the anchor to weigh Ronald down by attaching it to his belt. Further investigation of the Lady Jane revealed more evidence. Hairs matching Ronald's were discovered on a yacht cushion, and his fingerprint was found on the carrier bag used to transport the anchor back to the Lady Jane. Blood stains were discovered near the railway tracks at Albert's residence. The habit of accumulating documents harmed him, as they were confiscated and used to demonstrate his fraudulent businesses and deceitful activities. However, it was the testimonies of Elaine and Sheena that ultimately condemned him. Elaine's testimony demonstrated to the court that Albert stood to lose significantly if Ronald returned to England. Sheena dealt the decisive blow. She could not provide a clear alibi for Albert on the weekend of the murder. She stated that he had been on the yacht and appeared disheveled and agitated when he returned late on the murder day. Sheena's testimony marked a new phase in the investigation. She spoke in court about her life of fear with her father, his charm, and how she felt like a victim, just like anyone else who encountered him. When Albert took the stand, he appeared very charming and confident in court. He claimed that Sheena insisted on joining him and conceded to committing fraud and other illegal activities, but he firmly denied murdering Ronald. He explained that the blood found on the yacht was because Ronald had accidentally hit his head while they were fishing. Nevertheless, the jury quickly saw through his falsehoods and convicted him after only 2 hours of deliberation. High Court Justice Neil Butterfield addressed Albert, stating that the murder was carefully planned and executed with chilling efficiency. Justice Butterfield said that Albert was a plausible, intelligent, and ruthless man who posed a serious threat to anyone who stood in his way. Albert Johnson Walker was sentenced to 15 years to life in 2005 and was allowed to return to Canada to serve his sentence in 2007. At the age of 61, he was sentenced to 4 more years in prison to run concurrently with his sentence. In 2015, Albert applied for parole but withdrew his application at the last moment. Now, at age 75, the Canadian Parole Board has denied his application for day and full parole. His request to travel unaccompanied to Vancouver Island for a personal development program was also denied. It seems likely he will never be released. Albert seems to have accomplished the perfect crime. But then karma caused him to be exposed. If it weren't for Ronald Platt's real Rolex watch and a series of coincidences, he probably would have escaped legal punishment. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Hugelmayer. Raleigh, a rapidly growing city in northeastern North Carolina, is known for its rich history and beautiful oak trees. However, on September 1, 2017, a horrific crime rocked the city. That morning, at approximately 1 a.m., the Raleigh Police Department's 911 dispatch center received a call from 28-year-old Matthew Phelps. Phelps was distraught and said he had accidentally stabbed his wife, Lauren, to death while he was dreaming. He then suddenly woke up to find his wife lying in a pool of blood on the floor. "I took too much cough medicine and it affected me," Matthew explained to the operator, saying that it could cause a cold but it made him feel better. He admitted that he had been unable to sleep at night. The operator asked Matthew to check on his wife, asking if she was breathing and if there was any visible movement in her chest. Matthew replied, "No, she didn't move." Then he noticed the blood on him and said it was dry, not wet. During the conversation, Matthew finally revealed the reason behind his strange behavior and revealed the events that led up to the incident. Patrol officers from the Raleigh Police Department arrived at Matthew's home on Patuxent Street. Upon entering the home, they found Lauren, 29, lying motionless on the floor, a bloody knife on the bed, and cough drops on the bathroom counter. Despite showing no signs of life, Lauren was taken to the hospital by paramedics, where she was pronounced dead. The investigation into Lauren's death led police to have conflicting theories about whether it was an accident or a targeted murder, after which they brought Matthew in for further questioning. An autopsy revealed the horrific extent of Lauren's injuries, with 123 stab wounds, including 44 to the face and the rest to the head, neck, and arms. The couple's social media profiles, which contain hundreds of photos, show a happy relationship. Matthew has a clean record, and from the outside, they appear to be a happy, carefree couple. However, it cannot be ruled out that Matthew's actions were influenced by a large dose of cough syrup. Can cause euphoria, delusions, and often make people act strangely. To unravel the mystery behind the murder, police dug into the couple's past. Lauren Hugelmayer was born on June 9, 1988, in Los Angeles County to a deeply religious family. Lauren had a normal childhood with her two older sisters, Beth and Brianna. Lauren graduated from Swain County High School in North Carolina in 2007. She went on to earn a degree in business administration and management from Appalachian State University in 2011. After completing her studies, she worked as an auditor at Quintiles. She also started a side business selling Scentsy products. She was very passionate about Scentsy, and her Facebook page was filled with photos and videos of her side business, including trips she took with other Scentsy sellers. Lauren was a member of Hope Lutheran Church, where she was a Sunday school teacher and taught children and youth at the church. In her mid-20s, Lauren reconnected with Matthew Phelps, a classmate of hers from high school. Lauren and Matthew initially lost touch after high school when he transferred schools, and Lauren's family moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. Notably, their childhood experiences were very different. While Lauren grew up in a loving family, Matthew was not so fortunate. Matthew's parents abandoned him at birth, leaving him to live with his grandparents from a young age. Matthew's parents divorced shortly after he was born. His biological father was not interested in him, and his mother remarried several times but never gave Matthew a family or a lasting relationship with any stepfather. Matthew grew up without parents, and despite his grandparents' best efforts to love and care for him, he felt a deep emotional void. This could have led to behavioral problems from an early age. He began hanging out with bad friends and developed a habit of abusing drugs and alcohol during his high school years. Matthew and his friends were known to regularly use Coricidin, the same drug he claimed to have taken before attacking his wife. Of course, high doses do not cause a high, but Matthew and his friends took advantage of it anyway. Because of his addiction, Matthew's grandparents were forced to withdraw him from public high school and enroll him in a private Christian academy. This was successful, and Matthew improved significantly, earning better grades and eventually graduating. He then attended Clear Creek Baptist Bible College in Pineville, Kentucky, and graduated in 2011. Matthew was the one who came across Lauren's photo and realized they knew each other. After some hesitation, Matthew contacted Lauren through Instagram, liking every photo she posted. The two began talking, and their text messages quickly turned into long, late-night phone calls. Before long, both Matthew and Lauren were falling for each other. The two began a long-distance relationship, as Matthew was still living in Kentucky at the time. Despite living hundreds of miles apart, their relationship began to develop quickly. After a while, Matthew tried to visit Lauren and eventually moved to North Carolina to be with her. Since Lauren was very close to her family, she was happy to introduce Matthew to them. Most of her family members welcomed him, trusting Lauren's choice. They saw him as a kind man who truly cared about their daughter. Lauren's mother, Lori, thought Matthew was the right person for Lauren. However, Lauren's father, Dale, had reservations about the relationship. His concerns may have stemmed from his protective fatherly instincts, or perhaps it was intuition. In Dale's opinion, Matthew was moving too fast and that he was likely hiding a secret from Lauren. Despite his suspicions, Dale could not pinpoint exactly what made him feel uncomfortable about Matthew. However, he chose to put his feelings aside because his daughter seemed genuinely happy. Eventually, Matthew became a part of the family. However, during a night out at Lauren's parents' house, he revealed a shocking secret. He had been in a failed marriage before he dated Lauren, but refused to share any other details. This confession raised concerns about his honesty and intentions, especially given his young age at the time of the divorce and the fact that he had kept it from Lauren for months. Lauren's family were particularly concerned and they noticed his body language seemed suspicious. Despite their reservations, Lauren's love for Matthew remained unwavering, and her family chose to support the couple as they continued their relationship. Matthew and Lauren eventually got engaged in 2015. The engagement party left a lasting impression on family and friends. Matthew's mother had a strained relationship with Lauren, which was evident when she wore a white dress to the wedding to show her disapproval. Despite this, the event was a success and the couple married the following year. The couple were avid Star Wars fans, and they incorporated this theme into their wedding. With their love for each other and their new life together, Lauren and Matthew seemed to be very happy. For Lauren, married life exceeded her expectations. She had her own home, a fulfilling job, and a loving husband who made her smile every day. However, the dream marriage soon turned into an ugly reality when Matthew began to show his true colors. Just a few months after their marriage, Matthew had difficulty finding a job, and when he did find one, he quickly left without much explanation. During his unemployment, Matthew spent most of his time playing video games. Meanwhile, Lauren worked multiple jobs to support the family. This created significant financial stress, which was exacerbated by Matthew's overspending on expensive electronics and gaming equipment. Lauren had saved about $10,000, but Matthew spent it all very quickly, spending $1,200 on iTunes and Xbox subscriptions alone. He even stole money from Lauren's purse if she refused to pay for his lavish lifestyle. Lauren had a decent amount of savings in her bank account before she married Matthew. However, by the time she died, there was only $1,000 left. In addition to Matthew's spending habits, there were other problems in the relationship. Lauren also had problems with Matthew's family. During a visit to his family home 6 months after the wedding, his mother was cold to Lauren and the couple argued the entire time. As a result, Lauren felt unwelcome and isolated. The disagreements mainly revolved around Matthew's spending habits, which hindered their ability to pursue their shared goals and dreams. As mentioned earlier, the couple was very fond of Star Wars and were trying to save money to take a trip to Disney World. However, Matthew would spend the little money they had saved on his own selfish habits. And Lauren suspected that Matthew was having an affair with their neighbor, with whom he frequently socialized. One evening, while Lauren was cooking dinner and talking to her sister Beth on the phone, Matthew came home from work, but instead of going with Lauren, he went out with his neighbor. He then sent Lauren a text saying he was having a great time eating with his neighbors and told her to go out to dinner alone, which further raised her suspicions. Although Matthew spent a lot of time with their neighbor, he was extremely possessive of Lauren. His possessiveness led to frequent arguments over a man at church whom Matthew suspected of flirting with Lauren. Matthew's suspicions of Lauren only increased the distance between them. He often used his past experience of being dumped by his ex-wife, who had met another man on a mission trip, to justify his insecurities. However, this justification did nothing to help their relationship, which was deteriorating. Lauren had confided in loved ones about her desire to leave Matthew less than a year after they were married because of his controlling nature. However, driven by her faith, Lauren was determined to make their marriage work and put thoughts of divorce aside. As a result, she continued to project a vision of a perfect marriage on social media, posting pictures and videos of the couple with affectionate captions that were in stark contrast to the reality of their troubled marriage. Matthew decided to return to college to become a pastor, hoping that this would save his marriage. However, his wife Lauren was not impressed and was fed up with his thoughtless and immature behavior. Lauren eventually decided to leave Matthew. But she would never get the chance to carry out that decision. Instead, she was brutally murdered by her husband in their bed. The investigation quickly pieced together the events. The crime scene appeared to be staged. The knife and cough syrup were carefully placed, and Matthew had only a small amount of blood on him, mostly on his shoes and a few drops on his shirt. This contrasted with the brutal nature of the crime, in which Lauren had been stabbed 123 times. The lack of blood splatter suggested that Matthew had washed himself, which disproved his claim that he was in a delusional state at the time of the murder. Traces of blood were found throughout the apartment after a luminol test, suggesting it had been cleaned up before police arrived. Matthew was notably expressionless when police encountered him at the scene of the crime. Cough syrup manufacturer Bayer later issued a statement denying any link between the syrup and the violent behavior. A medical examination found that the amount of the drug in Matthew's system at the time of the murder was minimal, making it unlikely to have influenced his actions. Despite this, Matthew maintained that the cough syrup was the cause, prompting police to continue searching for further evidence. The investigation into Matthew's motives led police to his diary, in which he detailed his relationship problems with Lauren, expressing low self-esteem and insecurity due to feeling unwelcome by her family. Despite Lauren's best efforts, Matthew never felt like he fit in well with her family. The neighbor Lauren suspected was related to Matthew, told police that they were just friends and had grown close through conversations about anxiety and depression. She also shared that, as they spent more time together, Matthew began discussing darker topics such as suicide and death, perhaps planning to take the licensed gun he knew she had in the house. Further investigation of Matthew's phone revealed a suspicious online search history. The searches included queries about the intoxicating effects of cough syrup, such as its ability to cause a foggy feeling and whether other people had ever been high. These searches alone suggested that Matthew may have planned the crime in advance and considered using cough syrup as a defense strategy. While this evidence was circumstantial and not enough to build a solid case, the discovery of a secret Instagram account, @Marty_Radical, where Matthew posted dark content inspired by a movie, provided another important piece of evidence. Evidence showed that Matthew had a fascination with serial killers. This was evident in his portrayal of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho and his apparent interest in understanding what it was like to take another person's life, which he shared with a friend. Before killing Lauren, Matthew posted a photo on Instagram with the statement, "Everyone thinks I'm a serial killer, and the hashtag #FoundAnAngelToKill. His Instagram account frequently referenced demons and evil. When the trial began, prosecutors felt they had enough evidence to prove that Matthew had intentionally killed Lauren. However, the defense argued that this action was out of character for Matthew and attributed his behavior to his unstable and depressed mental state at the time. To support this claim, they presented several letters from Matthew's co-workers to the judge, asserting that this was out of character for Matthew. The prosecution called Matthew's ex-wife to testify, contesting his earlier claims that she had cheated on him. Instead, she claimed that Matthew had been unfaithful throughout their marriage. Their marriage, which suffered from similar problems to his marriage to Lauren, included his refusal to work, overspending, and not contributing to their shared goals. These problems eventually led to their separation. Matthew ultimately accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, a felony punishable by death or life in prison without parole, to avoid the death penalty. When asked to confirm his understanding of the plea, Matthew replied, "Yes, sir." He also admitted to stabbing his wife, Lauren Hugelmeier, multiple times. On October 5, 2018, the case against Matthew Phelps came to an end when he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At his sentencing, Matthew addressed Lauren's family and apologized, saying that he deeply regretted taking Lauren's life, which he admitted had deeply affected many people. Lauren's family did not accept Matthew's apology, finding it hollow and insincere. In response, a family member expressed anger and hatred towards Matthew, stating that they could never forgive him for his insensitive actions. To this day, Lauren's family still feels guilty for not intervening when they knew the relationship had taken a turn for the worse. To help others like their beloved Lauren, they founded an organization called Lauren's Light, which raises awareness about abusive relationships and domestic violence. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of William Lewis Reese. On May 16, 1997, 19-year-old Sandra Sapow stopped at a gas station in Webster, Texas to make a phone call from a pay phone. After making the call, she got back in her car and started driving, but soon discovered that her tire was flat. Sandra was forced to stop and was considering her options when a man in a white truck, who had been following her, stopped to offer help. The man appeared to be a kind stranger, and Sandra accepted his offer and got into his truck. The man restrained Sandra inside the truck and bound her wrists, then continued driving along Interstate 45. Sandra was terrified at this point and discovered that the truck doors were unlocked. Despite being pregnant, she was forced to jump out of the truck to escape her attacker. Unfortunately, he grabbed her, causing her to be dragged for several miles on the sidewalk. She eventually escaped, but was seriously injured. Sandra was taken to a nearby hospital, where the police were contacted. She described her attacker, but due to her trauma, she was unable to recall important details. That was not enough to arrest the attacker. With no other clues to the attacker's identity, the police decided to hypnotize Sandra. A few months later, while under hypnosis, she recalled important details, including the truck's license plate. The license plate led to a man named William Reese. William Lewis Reese was born on July 1, 1959, in Oklahoma. He was one of 13 siblings. As a child, he lived in the cities of Yukon and Anadarko. Due to his parents' difficult financial situation, he was forced to drop out of school in the 9th grade and work as a farm laborer. William married Judy Flaming in 1979, after she became pregnant. William joined the Oklahoma National Guard, but his time in the Guard was short-lived. His marriage to Judy was also troubled, and the couple divorced just a year after their marriage. Despite this, William convinced Judy to give their marriage another chance. They remarried and had a second child, but their reunion did not last long. William began drinking heavily and abusing Judy. The situation worsened in 1982 when Judy reported to the police that William had beaten her and threatened to kill her with a knife and a shotgun. As a result, Judy filed for divorce from William for the second time. William later remarried, but the marriage did not last long, as his second wife divorced him after only a few months. After the divorce, William continued his life of crime. In April 1986, he kidnapped a 19-year-old woman, the daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy. The woman was driving to a local gym when her car got stuck. William, who was working as a truck driver at the time, lured her into his truck, promising to take her to the nearest payphone. Once she was in the truck, he tied her up and sexually assaulted her. William drove the victim to a nearby motel where he rented a room. When he allowed her to use the bathroom, she took the opportunity to escape and call the police. William was arrested and charged but released on bail, but a month later he attacked another woman and was arrested again. He was then tried for both crimes, convicted, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. However, William appealed the conviction and had his sentence reviewed. The review found flaws in his case, leading to a reduction in his sentence. As a result, he was paroled in October 1996, after serving only 9.5 years of his original sentence. William moved to his mother's house in Anadarko, Oklahoma, after his release from prison. He then regained his driver's license in early 1997 and moved to Houston, Texas. There, William attempted to kidnap and sexually assault Sandra Sapau. This eventually led to his conviction for aggravated kidnapping in 1998 and his sentence of 60 years in prison. But while William was serving his sentence, police suspected him of being involved in many other crimes. It took years to unravel the secrets William had taken with him to prison while many families waited for answers. On the drizzly morning of April 3, 1997, around 9 a.m., 12-year-old Laura Smither asked her mother for permission to go jogging alone around 9 a.m. It was a decision that would prove to be one her mother would regret for the rest of her life. Laura, the daughter of Bob and Gay Smither, grew up in a house in Friendswood with her younger brother. She was known for her kind and gentle nature. Laura was not only an excellent student but also a talented ballet dancer from a very young age. Her dream of becoming a professional ballerina began to take shape after recently being accepted into the prestigious Houston Ballet Academy. When she asked to go for a run that fateful day, her mother was surprised because Laura never went out much. In fact, she didn't even go to school and was homeschooled by her parents. However, Laura had recently been inspired to do cardio to improve her dancing skills and wanted to go for a run while her mother was cooking breakfast. Her mother allowed her to go for a short run because she never thought anything bad would happen to her. Laura's parents began to panic when she didn't return after a few hours. She was always closely supervised and had never been out alone for so long, so they knew something was wrong. Laura's father searched the neighborhood but found no sign of her. Initially, they thought she would return soon, but as the hours passed, they realized something was wrong. The parents then contacted Laura's relatives and friends to see if anyone had any information about her whereabouts, but no one had any. After an unsuccessful search, they contacted the police to file a missing person report. Laura's father explained the situation to the police. "My daughter went jogging this morning, but she was gone much longer than I expected." The investigation into Laura's disappearance began, and her family immediately received support from the community. Volunteers, holding Laura's photo in their hands, went door to door asking residents if they had any information about the missing 12-year-old. However, their efforts stopped when night fell. The next morning, the police began an active search for Laura. A foot search party was deployed to the forest, while helicopters were also used to search for potential clues. Unfortunately, no clues were found during this time. Despite the lack of progress, community morale remained high, with hundreds of volunteers joining the search effort. The search continued for a week, with 6,000 volunteers involved. The National Coast Guard, along with the FBI, also joined the local police department to assist in the search. Although the possibility that Laura had become lost in the woods was initially considered, by this point in the investigation, police suspected foul play. Hoping to continue the search, the community held candlelight vigils and prayers in Laura's name, keeping alive the hope of finding her. However, another week passed without any leads in the case. On Sunday, April 20, 1997, a meeting was held at Friendswood High School to discuss the next steps in the search. During the meeting, the sheriff received a phone call, causing his expression to become anxious, causing concern among those present, who wondered what had happened. Around 10 p.m., Laura's parents received heartbreaking news. Laura's body had been found near a Pasadena reservoir, 12 miles from where Laura had disappeared. A man walking his dog discovered Laura's badly decomposed body in a muddy area. She was wearing only a pair of socks. 17 days after Laura went missing, her body was finally found, but in a brutal and tragic state. She had been brutally beaten and strangled to death. The news sent shockwaves through the Friendswood community, leaving residents heartbroken and fearful that a predator was on the loose and could target others. Determined to catch the perpetrator, the police acted quickly. However, they had no information about the person responsible for this heinous crime. In an effort to gather leads, they began interviewing local sex offenders. Soon, William Lewis Reese came to their attention. William, 38, was working at Windsor Estate in Friendswood as an equipment operator. Curiously, on the day of Laura's disappearance, he left work around the time Laura went missing and returned 30 minutes later. However, even after an extensive investigation, police found no solid evidence linking him to the crime. As a result, the case remained unsolved for many years. Kelly Cox was a 20-year-old student who went on a field trip to the local Denton prison on July 15, 1997, with her classmates for a criminology class. Before entering the prison, she parked her car in the parking lot across from the police station and hid the spare key in a magnetic box under the car. Following the professor's instructions, she locked her other belongings, including her cell phone, in the car. After completing the prison tour at noon, Kelly quickly left because she had to take a test that day at the University of North Texas, where she was a student. Kelly tried to leave by unlocking the car door with the spare key. But it did not work. She had checked the key the night before and it was fine. Kelly was unable to use her cell phone, so she went to a nearby gas station to use a public phone to call her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris III, for help. After the call, she went inside the gas station, bought a drink, and disappeared. Lawrence arrived about 45 minutes later, but Kelly's car was still in the parking lot and she was nowhere to be found. Her keys and key fob were also missing. Lawrence searched for Kelly but could not find her. He then called Kelly's mother to check if she had returned home, but she had not. At the time, the situation seemed suspicious, but Kelly's family decided to wait a little longer to see if she returned. However, their concerns grew as time went on. By 5:30 p.m., they believed something was wrong. This was the time Kelly was supposed to pick up her 19-month-old daughter, Alexis, from her babysitter. Knowing Kelly was a responsible mother, they realized that it was unusual for her to miss this appointment or not arrange for someone else to pick up Alexis. After the missing persons report was filed, police immediately began searching for Kelly. As is standard procedure in missing persons cases, they began questioning those closest to her. The first person they looked at was her boyfriend, Lawrence, but he was cleared as a suspect after passing 4 polygraph tests. A subsequent tip led them to another suspect, William Lewis Reese, who was also a suspect in the Laura Smither case. Although William did not live in Denton at the time of Kelly's disappearance, a gas station receipt placed him in the area on the same day Kelly went missing. Given William's history as a sex offender, he became a priority suspect, prompting police to search his car for any sign of Kelly, specifically her fingerprints. However, no fingerprints were found, leaving police with no further evidence linking William to Kelly's disappearance. With no leads, no witnesses, and no surveillance footage, the case quickly went cold and remained so for years to come. Kelly's disappearance was difficult for her mother and stepfather, as they had to raise Alexis on their own. As the years passed, Kelly never returned to her daughter, but following in her mother's footsteps, Alexis continued to attend the same college as Kelly, holding out hope that her mother would one day return. Over the years, Kelly's loved ones continued to share her story and circulate her photo, never giving up hope that she would return home. Unfortunately, their wishes have yet to come true. Jessica Kane, a 17-year-old high school student, was reported missing by her mother on August 17, 1997. At approximately 1:30 a.m. that morning, Jessica had left a cast party at Bennigan's on Bay Avenue Boulevard after a concert in Dickinson, Texas. The party was attended by her friends from the show. When her mother found out that Jessica had not returned home, she began calling the friends who had been with her that night. They confirmed that Jessica had left the party but had not returned home. Born on August 28, 1979, Jessica was known for her cheerful personality, love of sports and passion for drama, and was captain of the drill team at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas. Jessica's parents immediately became concerned that something had happened to her. When her father went to look for her, he discovered her car parked near the Lomark exit off the highway with her valuables still inside. He immediately contacted the police, who along with hundreds of volunteers were involved in the search for Jessica. During this difficult time, Jessica's parents met Bob and Gay Smither, who were also searching for their missing daughter, Laura. Laura Smither's family, who were also going through their own horrific nightmare, remained steadfast in their support of Jessica's parents and joined the search. Despite the efforts of the police and community to find Jessica, no sign or evidence of her turned up. The police began to suspect foul play and thought the chances of finding Jessica alive were extremely low. After weeks of searching, the case was dropped. But Jessica's family never gave up on finding answers. We are being forced to learn patience, an extremely difficult lesson, to wait, to be calm, and to trust in God. Tiffany Johnson was a 19-year-old woman who went missing on July 26, 1997. Her car was found abandoned at a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma, but there was no sign of her. Born on April 6, 1978, to Michael and Kathy Dobe, Tiffany is the youngest daughter in her family. She is very close to her family, especially her mother. Tiffany grew up as a cheerful and active girl in a small town. She enjoyed spending time outdoors, often helping her grandfather with his gardening and taking care of plants. After graduating from high school in 1996, Tiffany married Ryan Johnson in 1997 and moved to Bethany, Oklahoma with him. To save money for college, she took on 2 jobs while planning to enroll in Oklahoma State University and study botany. However, her plans never came to fruition. On July 26, 1997, Tiffany finished her part-time shift at a restaurant around 2 p.m. She was excited to celebrate her 3-month wedding anniversary with her husband, Ryan, and had planned to meet him at 11 p.m. Before leaving, Tiffany returned home, showered, and drove off in her white Dodge Neon. Tiffany went to the Sunshine Car Wash to have her car washed. She was never seen again. Her husband began searching for her that night, checking her home and other possible locations, but she was nowhere to be found. Around midnight, a Bethany police officer stumbled upon Tiffany's abandoned car at the car wash. Police found the car door open, the keys still in the ignition, and found Tiffany's wallet inside. In the glove box, police found Tiffany's mother's phone number. However, when police contacted Tiffany's mother, Kathy, who lived 60 miles away in Anadarko, she had no information about her daughter's disappearance. Tiffany's husband, Ryan, was the next person police contacted, but he also had no information about his wife's whereabouts. At this point, it was clear that something was wrong. Before police could begin searching for Tiffany, a disturbing discovery was made on July 27, 1997, near the intersection of I-40 and Gregory Street. A search party looking for another missing girl stumbled upon the body of a young white woman. Police suspected that the body might be Tiffany's as soon as they arrived on the scene. After being shown a photo of the victim, Ryan quickly confirmed that it was indeed his wife. An autopsy could not determine the exact time of her death, but it indicated that she had been the victim of sexual assault and strangulation. Police collected and preserved an unidentified DNA sample found on her body as evidence. With no leads on a suspect, police initially focused on the husband, Ryan, as a potential suspect in his wife's death. However, an alibi soon came to light, revealing that Ryan had been at work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. on the day Tiffany was last seen. Tiffany's last known whereabouts were at the car wash at 6 p.m. Just when the investigation seemed to be stalling, a crucial clue emerged. It was revealed that Tiffany's cause of death involved sexual assault, as well as severe head and shoulder trauma. The car wash owner soon contacted the police, reporting that a suspicious person, matching the description of a man wanted for kidnapping in Texas a few months earlier, had been seen at the car wash on the same day Tiffany went missing. That man was none other than William Lewis Reese. His mother was a close friend of Tiffany's mother, and William even called Tiffany's mother, Kathy, after her daughter's death to offer his condolences. However, William was able to evade justice for a while, as the police investigation into Tiffany's murder failed to produce any evidence implicating him. Years later, in 2015, police made a significant breakthrough in the case thanks to advances in DNA technology. A DNA sample collected during Tiffany's autopsy was retested and matched a profile in a national database, known as CODIS, linking William to the crime. William was then charged in Oklahoma City with Tiffany's 1997 kidnapping and murder. Just as his trial was about to begin, William suddenly confessed to other crimes in an attempt to negotiate a deal with the prosecution. William had eluded police for nearly 19 years, despite having a serious criminal history, including armed kidnapping. Police suspected him of murdering Laura Smither and of being involved in the disappearances of Jessica Kane and Kelly Cox. To confirm their suspicions, they showed him photos of the three victims. William quickly admitted responsibility but denied any sexual motive behind the crimes. William agreed to reveal the location of Kelly and Jessica's remains in order to avoid facing the death penalty. In April 2016, he led police to a site in a Houston pasture where human remains were discovered. After several days of excavation, the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that the remains belonged to Jessica Kane. The search then shifted to a separate burial site in Brazoria County, where another set of remains were found. Using dental records, police identified the remains as those of Kelly Cox. The trial for the murder of Tiffany Johnston took place in May 2021 in Oklahoma County District Court. A jury found William Lewis Reese guilty on May 28, 2021. The judge then sentenced William to death on August 19, 2021, for the kidnapping and murder of Tiffany. After his conviction, William was extradited to Texas in March 2022 to stand trial for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane. William pleaded guilty to all three murders and was sentenced to life in prison in June 2022. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Chad Amelia. Chad Amelia was born in 1992 in Santa Clara, California, USA. His parents, of Irish descent, married young and then moved to the United States. They were eager to pursue the American dream, a common goal for millions. When they arrived in the United States, they found themselves isolated in a foreign country, with no one nearby to support them. Communication with relatives was only possible by phone. Despite the distance, the couple and their children remained determined and did not return to Ireland. Chad grew up with his younger brother Shane. They got along and supported each other from a young age. Following the example of their parents, difficulties shaped their characters, making them kind and fair. Both boys were always ready to help others in need. Chad, the eldest, was especially hardworking. He played baseball and football in high school, and when a coach noticed his talent, he was given a spot on the school team. This opportunity fueled his passion for sports, and he became a talented football player. After graduating from high school, he attended California State University, Chicago, graduating in 2018. Soon after, he joined Camarilla, an accounting firm. At the same time, he continued his studies in economics to improve his accounting skills. Known for being sociable and kind, Chad easily connects with people. One spring day in 2018, 20-year-old Chad was walking his dog in the park when he unexpectedly met Bryn Spetcher, a smart, friendly, and determined 27-year-old girl. Like Chad, Bryn is from Chicago, Illinois. She moved to Washington when she was older, making some changes to pursue her education and find a good job. Bryn was born with hearing problems and was nearly deaf from a young age, forcing her to wear a hearing aid. This made her feel out of place in the educational environment, leading to various challenges. However, it also fueled her desire to help others, as she tried to maintain a positive attitude. Despite the difficulties of moving to California, Bryn earned a degree in audiology, a significant accomplishment that she had long pursued. Her career was just beginning, and she quickly secured a position as an audiologist at a hospital in Los Angeles. She wanted to help others who, like her, faced hearing challenges. Bryn lived in California for about a year but was not sociable and often took time off from work, so she did not have a wide circle of acquaintances, communicating only with a few friends with whom she could spend weekends. Chad changed her life dramatically. They started talking and quickly realized that they had many common interests. Chad was very fond of his smart and attractive girlfriend. He often talked about her to his friends, and he expressed his happiness. She seemed pleased too, eager to share stories about him with her friends. They seemed like the perfect couple, visiting each other often. On May 27, 2018, Bryn went to her boyfriend's house, bringing along her beloved service dog, a husky guide dog. Her boyfriend, Chad, also had a dog, and the two animals got along well. The following weekend, about a month later, Bryn was planning a business trip to another city, so she wanted to spend some time relaxing with her Chad before the trip. And Chad lived in the Tarzana Oaks area of California. That evening, one of Chad's neighbors, a guy named Vinny, returned home around 2 a.m. He spent about half an hour with Chad and Bryn, who were watching their favorite TV series. Vinny then went to sleep in his room, while another neighbor slept, using earplugs and sleeping pills. That night, Bryn and Chad decided to smoke marijuana. In California, marijuana use is legal, having been legalized in 1996. Chad took a few breaths and quickly relaxed. Bryn at first, she didn't feel anything, so she tried again. This time, she felt terrible. Her mind went blank, her vision blurred, and she had trouble breathing. She told her boyfriend, who went into the kitchen to get her some water. She felt so bad that she feared for her life and asked Chad to stay with her. Chad, who had used before, didn't have the same problems and was calm enough to support her. Bryn admits that she thought she was going to die. She began hallucinating about dying in pain and felt like she wouldn't survive the night. She was angry at her boyfriend because he seemed fine and suspected that he was setting her up. In her hallucinations, he became the bad guy who orchestrated her death through drug use. She also heard voices in her head urging her to kill him, and Bryn realized that the only way she could survive was to get rid of her boyfriend. Suddenly, she stood up and went into the kitchen, where she picked up a large knife. Bryn returned to the living room, where Chad was still lying on the couch. She stabbed him multiple times in the chest. At that moment, she heard voices urging her to continue stabbing. She couldn't resist them because she felt out of control. Bryn experienced a fierce cruelty and aggression she had never felt before. The hallucinations continued, and with each stab, she felt relief. Meanwhile, the neighbors were in other rooms on the second floor. One was fast asleep and didn't hear anything. The second neighbor, Vinny, heard some rustling from downstairs, but there was no loud noise or screaming, so he didn't think much of it. Vinny assumed the couple was watching TV. After a while, he heard Chad's voice asking Bryn to leave him alone and call for help. The voice got louder and more frightening, which scared Vinny. To find out what was going on, he started going down from the first floor. When he walked in, the first thing he noticed was the frightened dogs. When he entered the room, he saw the furniture scattered everywhere. In the living room, Bryn had a knife in her hand, covered in blood. Chad lay there, wheezing, his eyes wide with horror as he looked at Vinny. Chad's hand was slashed by her, defenseless, but Bryn, in her frenzy, stabbed him with a kitchen knife. A large gash across his chest that Bryn continued to attack with a look of fury on her face. Vinny yelled at her to stop, but instead, Bryn turned to look at him with a blank expression. She was still holding the knife. Feeling the danger, Vinny quickly went upstairs and knocked on the second neighbor's door to warn him. However, the neighbor was fast asleep and did not respond. So Vinny grabbed his cell phone and ran downstairs. Fearing for his life, he ran out onto the street and quickly called 911. Once outside, Vinny used his phone to call emergency services. His screams attracted the attention of the neighbors, who ran out to see what was going on, making Vinny feel safer. He started banging on the windows and shouting for the girl to stop. The neighbors, seeing the situation inside the house, also started shouting. Everyone was scared and shocked. Meanwhile, inside the apartment, Bryn continued to attack Chad, not paying attention to the commotion outside. Within minutes, the police met Vinny, who was sobbing about the events that were happening. He could only point to the apartment where the violent attack was taking place. The police rushed into the house to intervene. In the living room, they found Bryn repeatedly stabbing a young man in the chest. The room was covered in blood, and although the young man showed no signs of life, Bryn did not stop. The police considered using force to end the attack. However, when ordered to drop the knife, Bryn began stabbing herself in the neck. The police quickly used a stun gun, but it was ineffective. Bryn continued to harm herself, so the police used a baton to disarm her. It took 9 blows to knock the knife out of her hand, even breaking her arm in several places, but she seemed completely unaware of the injuries. Only then did Bryn drop the knife. In addition to stabbing Chad, she also stabbed her dog several times. When other rescue services arrived, everyone was shocked by the horrific scene, which looked like a bloodbath. Doctors tried to resuscitate Vinny, but he was in shock and could not remember or explain what had happened in the house. The experience had a profound effect on him, and he needed a long recovery period with the help of psychologists. The dog was treated at a veterinary clinic and eventually recovered from his injuries. Unfortunately, by the time the police arrived, Chad was dead. There was a lot of blood from the stab wound and witnesses to the incident were present. These witnesses were neighbors who had come out of the house when they heard screams. They described what they saw to the police, but could not understand how such a brutal attack could have happened or what had provoked it. Chad had 108 stab wounds, most of them concentrated around the heart and neck. Some of the wounds were superficial and not life-threatening, while others penetrated vital organs. It is difficult to determine which specific wound caused Chad's death. He also had multiple self-defense wounds. Bryn after self-inflicted wounds to her neck. She was rushed to the hospital, where she was placed on a ventilator and intubated. When police tried to communicate with her, they used only a piece of paper and a pen, as she was unable to fully respond because of the life support equipment. Once she was stabilized in the hospital, she was able to communicate fully. Various tests showed traces of mild substances in her blood. Doctors noted that the levels were very low and did not pose a threat to her life or mental health. It is unusual for such a small amount to cause such an extreme reaction. However, doctors did not rule out the possibility that her blood levels had dropped. When Bryn spoke to the police, she claimed that she did not remember anything that had happened. As a result, she did not know where Chad was or what had happened to him. She believed that her injuries may have been caused by an assault with the intent to rape her. In addition to the neck injury, she also suffered a broken neck and a bludgeoned arm, which was how the police safely disarmed her of the knife. However, she did not remember the event either. Bryn could not believe the police account of how she attacked and stabbed her boyfriend. Despite this, she did not seem to feel remorse for her actions toward Chad. Bryn refused to comment further and immediately requested a lawyer, as she considered herself innocent and blamed the incident on the effects of drugs. The last thing she remembered was being discharged from the hospital after 4 days, on May 31st, when she was immediately arrested for Chad's murder. Eventually, she was able to share a more detailed account of the events of that tragic night. Bryn recounted her story. She had gone to visit her boyfriend with a dog and they watched TV together. Around 10:30 p.m., when Chad stepped outside to smoke, she joined him, saying she wanted to try it too. She then began to feel unwell, hallucinating and hearing voices in her head. Bryn had difficulty breathing, felt disoriented and nauseous. She then had a hallucination blaming Chad for her condition. The hallucination urged her to kill Chad, claiming it was the only way to stop her bad feelings. Although she initially resisted, the hallucinations grew stronger. Feeling like she was going to die, Bryn attacked Chad with a knife but insisted that she had no control at the time, claiming she was innocent. When the police arrived, the hallucinations told her to harm herself. She complied with these voices. Bryn insisted that she could not resist because the voices in her head had complete control over her. She could not even drop the knife when the police asked her to, until they broke her arm. Bryn believed that she was suffering from drug-induced psychosis at the time. She was eventually charged with first-degree murder, but she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Preliminary hearings took place and her bail was set at $500,000, which she paid, allowing her to await trial at home. During this time, the police continued to investigate and Bryn's attorney repeatedly requested adjournments. And Chad's murder trial was set for October 23, 2023, but a new district attorney took office a month earlier, causing further delays. The trial finally began on November 9, 2023. The new prosecutor reduced her charges to manslaughter, which shocked the victim's family. They could not understand how someone could accidentally stab the victim more than 100 times. Remarkably, all of this took so long that Chad's mother did not live to see the trial and never saw justice. She passed away in 2020. The court psychiatrist concluded that Bryn suffered from a psychotic disorder caused by smoking. This decision was supported by other experts, and according to the prosecution, they did not have enough evidence to refute this conclusion. During the trial, Chad's family insisted that it was a deliberate massacre and demanded punishment. The defense argued that Bryn's behavior showed signs of psychosis. She was not aware of her actions, first stabbing her boyfriend and then hitting him multiple times. A police officer using a stun gun was unable to stop her, and they were only able to take the knife away after breaking her arm with 9 blows from her baton. This behavior showed that she was psychotic. However, according to Bryn, she understood what was happening. She remembered everything and claimed that she saw the murder as the only way to survive. She was aware of her actions and made her own decisions, despite experiencing hallucinations. Her arguments were strongly opposed by her attorneys. As a result, the defense continued to delay the trial, which lasted for 5 years. The main issues in dispute were whether there was intent to kill Chad and whether Bryn used the drug voluntarily. Under California law, a person can be held responsible for such crimes while under the influence of drugs or alcohol if it can be proven that the use was voluntary. If the drug was coerced, the killing is considered unintentional. This must be proven. The prosecution pointed to numerous letters from the girl, in which Bryn repeatedly told friends that she had been drinking. She also mentioned smoking occasionally, suggesting that this was not her first time using. The prosecution argued that on the day Chad was killed, she also used the drug voluntarily, as she had done before. Many colleagues defended Bryn, describing her as a very responsible person. She had no criminal record and no one could testify that she was capable of causing such a psychotic episode. However, this claim seems dubious, given her medical history, which should have made her aware of the potential consequences. She defended herself by saying that she was unsure what drugs her boyfriend had smoked and given her that night and believed he had given them to her intentionally. No other drugs were found in his home. Bryn's parents defended her, claiming that she had no romantic relationship with Chad and that she was acting in self-defense against harassment. They attempted to portray her as a heroine. However, friends on both sides disagreed, saying that Chad and Bryn had been together for nearly 2 months, had an intimate relationship, and that everyone knew about it. Chad's relatives denied any allegations of violence against him. They described him as respectful of women and noted that although he had a smoking habit, which his parents had advised him to quit, it was legal and had never caused any problems. They insisted he was not aggressive, so they did not believe he would attack his girlfriend. Throughout the trial, Bryn showed no remorse for what had happened. The only time she cried was when the brutal details of her arrest were described. She could recall the intense pain of being beaten with a baton. The case was complex, controversial, and attracted considerable public attention. Many were puzzled as to how a seemingly kind-hearted girl, dedicated to helping others, could commit a brutal murder. The jury then deliberated on the verdict. The jury then found Bryn Spejcher, 32, guilty of manslaughter. Bryn showed emotion for the second time during the trial. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. At that point, she was focused only on her sentence. She did not care that she had caused serious harm to her loved one. Bryn simply did not want to take responsibility for her actions. Chad's father spoke to reporters, expressing his frustration with the justice system's decision, which he considered unfair. He also pointed to inconsistencies in Bryn's testimony. She contradicted herself. For example, she initially described her boyfriend as a nice young man who was easy to talk to. However, when the subject of smoking was brought up, Bryn admitted that she had always been afraid of him and then began to deny that they had a relationship. Chad's father said that Bryn did not want to take responsibility for her terrible actions and tried to blame Chad for the bloody massacre to reduce her sentence. The father could not believe that the court would seriously consider that a person could accidentally inflict more than 100 wounds on another person. His son's death was not simple or painless. Chad had suffered a lot, and now the killer was trying to blame him with lies. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Bryn smoked of her own free will, and Chad had never forced her to take drugs when she did not like them. However, psychiatric experts confirmed that Bryn's psychosis was caused by the drug. This was one of the first cases where a voluntary user was justified in using drugs. And while awaiting the verdict, the girl was released on bail. On January 24, 2024, Bryn Spetscher was sentenced to 2 years of probation in order to complete 100 hours of community service. The judge justified the lenient sentence by stating that Bryn was not in control of his actions during a psychotic episode, making a reduced sentence appropriate. The attorney applauded the court's decision, calling it the right thing to do. However, Chad's father was unhappy with the ruling, arguing that the judge had set a dangerous precedent. He said the decision implied that marijuana users in California were being given a license to kill. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mikhail Bush. Mikhail Bush was born on February 13, 1997, in Alberta, Canada. She is the eldest of 2 daughters. She attended a local high school, where she met Cody McConnell. They began their relationship in the summer of 2014. Later their relationship blossomed and they decided to start a family together. After graduating, Mikhail worked at a public organization that supported people with disabilities by finding nurses and meeting their needs. There, she realized her passion for helping people. At work, she learned the basics of healthcare and decided to pursue a career in nursing. To achieve this, she needed formal training, so Mikhail enrolled at Northwest College in Edmonton. She devoted all her free time to studying, determined to become a skilled professional. Working in the medical field in Canada is respected and well paid. This meant that pursuing a major that she loved would allow her to support their small family. Her relationship with Cody grew stronger, and he supported her in her studies. At that time, they lived together. In 2019, shortly after graduating, she found out she was pregnant. This was an important and anticipated event for the young couple, and they were very excited. Everything went as well as could be. Their dream of expanding their family became a reality. Soon after, the young couple got married and began preparing for their future child. On April 17, 2020, they welcomed a son named Noah McConnell. After his birth, Mikhail and Cody devoted themselves to taking care of their child and supported each other wholeheartedly. At this time, Mikhail and Cody lived happily together. Noah was a very cute child. He rarely cried, and when he did, it usually stopped very quickly. However, a few months later, Cody had difficulty working and was easily tired, so his wife Mikhail advised him to go to the hospital. After the examination, Cody was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Because of this, he lost his job. Cody was on sick leave for a long time, but during this time, they always supported and understood each other. The couple tried their best to maintain their happiness. After a while, Cody was able to return to his job. He worked in the installation of turboprop engines, a job that required frequent business trips to different cities. This sudden change in lifestyle naturally affected the family. At that time, Mikhail was a housewife, taking care of her children without a regular job. In order to avoid being apart for a long time, they decided to buy a mobile home. Life on the road was difficult, but the family stayed together. By August 2020, their life had undergone significant positive changes. Cody secured a higher-paying job, allowing him to spend more time at home. The couple traveled frequently to different locations, but they had the opportunity to rent an apartment in Hinton, Alberta. This small town is 3 hours west of Edmonton, near Jasper National Park. The move, which meant they no longer had to live on the road, marked a long-awaited change in their family life. In early September, the couple and their child moved into their new home. The apartment was much more spacious than their previous home and certainly larger than the small trailer they had been living in. Cody could finally settle down with his family and focus on building a life together. However, the young couple had no idea that their happiness would soon turn into a nightmare so severe that a change in the law would be necessary. On September 16, 2021, in Canada, the day started like any other morning for the family. Cody took his child for a walk and they spent money on entertainment, something they could not afford before. Now that life had improved, Cody was able to spend more time with his 16-month-old son. Cody then went to work as usual, leaving his wife at home. His shift ended around 5 or 6 p.m., and he returned home, eager to spend more time with his son. However, when he got home, the apartment was quiet. The child did not respond to his name or make any noises as usual. The silence was alarming. After searching all the rooms, Cody realized that his family was actually not home, which was unusual. Cody thought that his wife might have gone to the store with the baby for a while. But upon closer inspection, he realized that was unlikely, as the stroller was still in the apartment, neatly folded and untouched. Without the stroller, they would not have gone for a walk, and his wife's car was still parked outside, which made him even more worried. Cody ran around the apartment screaming, but the silence made him suspicious. In the kitchen, he discovered another worrying sign. His wife had started cooking dinner but had stopped abruptly. The groceries were still on the table, some cut and some still intact. It seemed like something had interrupted her, which made Cody extremely worried. He tried calling his wife but couldn't get through. With no answer and growing increasingly worried, he decided to take action. Although he didn't want to believe that anything bad had happened, he hoped they had just gone to a nearby park or plaza and lost track of time. Desperate to find her, he set off immediately. With increasing anxiety, he searched alleys and parks but found no trace of his wife and son. After going through the area around the apartment complex several times, he contacted friends and family, hoping that she was with someone he knew. However, no one heard or saw her all day. Around 7 p.m., in desperation, Cody called the police to report that his wife and son were missing. Cody called a friend named Jareth, who came to their home to help. Together, they began searching the neighborhood, still hoping to find Mikhail and his son without police intervention. They checked the apartment again and walked around the entire apartment complex several times. Unable to calm down, they began going from apartment to apartment, knocking on doors and asking neighbors if they had seen or heard anything. When the police arrived, Cody and Jarrett were still searching. The police had to calm them down. Since Cody and Jareth were not professionals, their search could disrupt or destroy important evidence. Therefore, the police instructed them to stop their search efforts. The police thoroughly searched the apartment, the surrounding residential area, and nearby squares and parks, but like Cody, they were unable to find anything. Cody's next-door neighbor, Robert, told the police that he had witnessed an unknown man running out of Cody's apartment that day. Although he could not provide further details, the neighbor's account raised suspicions. Therefore, the police decided to consult with the apartment manager to gain access to surveillance camera footage. They wanted to determine when and why Mikhail and the child disappeared. Whether she had run away or been kidnapped. There was speculation that a lover might have been involved, but Cody adamantly denied this. He said he had a happy family. Initially, police found no signs of forced entry, struggle, or blood in the family's apartment. Police also considered whether there had been a kidnapper. However, how could the perpetrator have entered without any signs of forced entry? It was probably someone Mikhail knew and trusted enough to open the door for. When police reviewed the surveillance footage, they found no evidence to support the neighbor's claim that a stranger had entered Mikhail's apartment. Instead of catching the mysterious stranger, the footage showed the neighbor taking a bag out of her apartment and throwing it in the apartment complex's trash bin. Mikhail and her son were not seen in the surveillance footage, raising suspicions about the neighbor's involvement in the disappearance. Meanwhile, Cody and Jarrett anxiously waited for news near home, eventually staying at another neighbor's apartment. Cody was expecting his wife and child to return. At 2 a.m., at the apartment where Cody was staying, the police knocked on the door. However, they did not have good news for Cody. Instead, they asked him to move to a hotel while the investigation was ongoing. The police stated that waiting was useless. They needed to take a closer look at the apartment and the area around the house. In fact, the police did not come by accident. They did not want to tell Cody that his child had been found dead, because they had to confirm the prime suspect. The next morning, Cody, who had not slept all night, went to the police station for questioning after leaving his home. The police asked him the usual questions to piece together the events of the previous day. However, many of the questions left him confused, leading him to suspect that something was wrong. The police then revealed that Noah's body was found in a trash can inside the residence. Noah had been strangled, with a man's sock in her mouth and a plastic bag over her head. Some of Mikhail's belongings were found, but her body was not found. Chance for his wife and children to return home safely was gone. Receiving news from the police, he was horrified and in pain when his child died tragically. During the night, Cody was asked to leave the apartment because the police did not want to draw attention to the arrest of the neighbor who lived next door. The police, skeptical of the neighbor Robert's story, visited him again and asked to check his apartment, where the police found a body in the bathroom. She was small and lying face down, but the worst part was that her entire body had been cut into pieces. Experts found evidence of sexual violence committed after her death. The Mikhails had only moved into the complex a few weeks ago. They had barely had time to see some of the neighbors. With Robert, they had hardly ever seen him. Cody thought they had a quiet, unassuming neighbor who didn't want to draw attention to himself. Robert kept his distance from everyone. Now, it was clear that the most dangerous guy was living among them, but no one knew about it. What the neighbors didn't know was that Robert Maid had been arrested on suspicion of murder and child abuse. During a background check, police discovered that Robert had a criminal record with 24 convictions, including 2 for sexual violence. He was first charged with a felony for assaulting a girl in the early 2000s. It is unclear whether he ever served any prison time for this crime. Then, in 2012, Robert was charged with a brutal sex crime. He posed as a nanny to gain the trust of a couple and, when he picked up their child, raped the child instead of going for a walk in the park. He is suspected of being involved in other similar incidents. Robert was arrested and convicted for this crime, but only served 3 years. While in prison, he attended a special rehabilitation program for sex offenders, received psychological support, and attended church regularly. Robert was released from prison after psychiatrists deemed him ready to re-enter society. However, this assessment proved to be incorrect. Just a few years after his release, he expressed a desire to harm innocent people. The police reviewed his test results while in prison and found that he had not been rehabilitated. Instead, he preferred to attack children and young women for the thrill of it. Since there was no legal basis to detain him any longer, Edmonton police could only warn that Robert was dangerous and likely to harm someone again. This man was clearly a threat to women, and especially young children. In order to protect society from potential rapists, many restrictions were placed on him. Specifically, he was prohibited from being near children and women, and could not live near schools or parks. Robert was also subject to a curfew and could only leave Edmonton with official permission from his supervising police officer. After his release from prison, he strictly followed these regulations for many years. He was monitored, so he did not appear in crime reports. However, over time it became clear that he had been waiting for an opportunity to commit a crime. Under Canadian law, a convicted sex offender can be removed from the Dangerous Offender Register if they have not been involved in any similar incidents for a year. In June 2020, this happened to one such offender. Despite his extensive criminal history, a court decision removed the rapist from police supervision. This allowed him, to move to a new residential area, a move that had previously been restricted. Now, he is unsupervised and unmonitored. The public was outraged by the tragic situation. By removing the restrictions on the offender, the police endangered the lives of women and children in the area. Cody said people deserved to know that they were living near a dangerous rapist, giving them the opportunity to relocate if necessary. The investigation found that 2 victims were killed before police were notified. It was discovered that Robert and the victims were just neighbors in a senior housing complex. They did not know or communicate with each other. During questioning, Robert openly confessed to these motives. As before, he informed the police staff. He struggled with the urge to kill and physically abuse at the same time. He admitted that he was a sick person who needed to be prayed for and confessed that he enjoyed the process. Robert believed that he needed to be isolated from society, otherwise, he feared that he would repeat his actions. Cody, who had just lost his entire family, was visited by his brothers, friends, co-workers, neighbors, and concerned citizens who came to pay their respects. It was believed that if there had not been a system error, the police would have continued to monitor this dangerous criminal and Mikhail would still be alive. Cody attended all the hearings, wearing his wife's wedding ring around his neck and carrying a blue blanket. Deeply saddened, he was determined to defend his rights. Even through tears, he insisted that ordinary citizens should be informed about potentially dangerous criminals living nearby. Until recently, ordinary Canadians did not have access to databases of dangerous criminals. Wanting to protect other families, Cody McConnell launched a campaign to change the existing laws. The effort, dubbed Noah's Law in honor of his young son. Robert pleaded guilty to all charges and recounted the events of that day in court. He said that after Cody left for work, Cody's wife and son went for a walk in a nearby park. When they returned home, they encountered the apartment manager. The manager informed Mikhail that Cody had made a mess in the hallway the day before and asked him to clean it up. Sure enough, Cody had made a mess the day before, leaving a mark. Mikhail apologized for the mess and promised to clean it up, she planning to do so later. At that moment, Robert overheard the conversation and saw it as the perfect opportunity to act. Mikhail entered the apartment with the child, fed Noah, and planned to put him to bed. While the child was playing, Mikhail began cooking dinner and called her friend. During the phone conversation, there was a knock on the door. The friend later testified that she had heard the knock, although it was faint due to the distance. Robert offered to help clean up since she was busy watching the child. The woman thanked him for his help and agreed. Her conversation with her friend then ended. After cleaning up, Robert found an excuse to enter Mikhail's apartment. When he gained access to her home, suddenly, Robert attacked her, strangling her with his hands for about 10 minutes. Even then, Mikhail still showed signs of life, so Robert took an electrical cord from an appliance and wrapped it around her neck until she stopped breathing. He raped her, then quietly dragged her to his apartment through the hallway, placing her in the bathroom. Robert then took a knife and inflicted wounds on her body, even removing some of her organs. The police could not find these organs during the investigation and they were not found in the trash cans, like Noah. Meanwhile, the child was still alive and in the apartment. However, Robert considered the child a threat, so he decided to get rid of the child. He took the child to his apartment and tried to gag the child with a sock. He then suffocated the child by placing a plastic bag over his head. He then placed the body in a trash bag and threw it in a dumpster. During the trial, Robert's behavior was inconsistent. He insists that he is not a bad person and blames mental health issues. However, he also admits that he needs to be separated from society. The idea is that criminals should never be removed from the database if they pose an increased threat. There should be increased police surveillance without any time limits. It is also suggested that residents in nearby areas should be notified if there is a potentially dangerous person living near them. Cody stated that he would never move his family into the same apartment complex as someone like Robert. Currently, the dissemination of requests and proposals to protect the rights of all residents in the country continues. This theme resonates and continues to grow. During the trial, Robert Keith Major, 55, was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ana Ramirez. Amanda and Ana Ramirez, born on January 8, 1992, in Camden, New Jersey, USA, are identical twins, arriving just minutes apart. From a young age, they were incredibly close, often wearing similar clothes and choosing the same toys. Their relationship was characterized by understanding and genuine emotional, with conflicts between them being rare. Although they were born in the USA, they come from a family that emigrated from Puerto Rico, a large family with the dream of achieving the American dream. Despite facing challenges, their family's unity and love helped them overcome difficulties. Amanda and Ana were seeking a better life in the USA. When they grew up, their family gave birth to another daughter. Of course, Amanda and Ana stood them out because of their identical appearance. From a young age, their parents emphasized the special bond they had since their time in the womb. They slept in the same crib during their first months, which contributed to their close relationship. As they grew older, Amanda and Ana did everything together and acted as a team. They were very close and always stayed by each other's side. Their mother encouraged this bond, hoping Amanda and Ana would always support each other. And indeed, they did. Amanda and Ana took their first steps together, holding hands to keep from falling. The two girls, who grew stronger together, they were inseparable during kindergarten, elementary, and high school. Their bond stayed strong into adulthood, and it seemed like nothing could break this pure sisterly union, which grew stronger each year. Gradually, carefree childhood ended, and adulthood began. Ana had better relationships with man. She was the first of the twins to get married and become a mother. She was described as a loving and dedicated mother who did everything for her kids. At that time, Ana had completed courses and received certification in a field of activity related to helping people. This accentuates her friendly and positive personality. Colleagues and friends admired Ana's kindness, describes her as a friendly and humble beauty. When Ana became a mother, she had to balance her career with her family responsibilities, striving to create a bright future for her daughter. Later, she had 2 more children. Ana still maintains regular contact with her family, especially her beloved twin sister, Amanda. She often comes home to visit her grandparents, mother, brothers, and sisters. Ana and Amanda still keep in regular contact, they exchanging messages and phone calls to share their daily experiences. When Ana had a daughter, Amanda was eager to know all about her niece and frequently inquired about her. Amanda helped Ana a lot, supporting her in taking care of her children and learning the fundamentals of motherhood. Amanda also aspired to have her own family and become a mother, so she paid close attention to every piece of advice Anna offered. Amanda was kind and caring, always ready to assist. Amanda regularly spent time with Anna and her children. During the first few years of her life, Anna's eldest daughter spent a lot of time with both her mother and with her aunt, Amanda. This allowed the aunt, Amanda, to bond with her niece and gain valuable childcare experience. These skills and knowledge later proved useful to her. At that time, Anna was very busy, and it was with Amanda's help that she was able to manage daily tasks. Whenever they had free time, the sisters often spent time together, went for walks, and relaxed on weekends. Anna and Amanda loved parties and could go dancing all night long. In those moments, they were with their close friends. They were always friendly and cheerful. However, the story of the two sisters had a sad ending. Life showed that even the closest and most sincere connections can be broken in a cruel and heartless way, and the circumstances are so strange that it's almost impossible to tell the truth from the lies. In 2019, Anna and her twin sister Amanda were both 27 years old. Anna had 3 children, while Amanda had just given birth to her first child. During this time, Amanda was experiencing a difficult period in her life. She had struggled with emotional problems after giving birth. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression, and her family around to support her. To help her sister Amanda through this difficult time, Anna often tried to bring some joy into her life. Amanda frequently met with Anna to have a drink and discuss the difficulty of motherhood, which both sisters understood well. On the evening of June 22, the sisters planned to attend a party with close friends. After the party, they intended to visit their cousin before heading home. That evening, Anna and Amanda gathered at home to choose their outfits and do their makeup. At the party, they had a great time, laughing and enjoying themselves. The next morning, Anna and Amanda posted a photo together on Anna's social media page and captioned it that they were having fun. Nobody anticipated that this cheerful post would be the last one where both twins would be alive. Just a few hours later, the police received a call from a distressed girl who said she had found her sister on the street. The caller is Amanda, and she urgently requested the officers to hurry. Amanda reported that Anna had been shot in the chest but didn't know who the shooter was. She noticed a deep cut on the right side of the chest. Anna was lying on the street right in front of their cousin's house, where they had spent most of the evening drinking and taking selfies. Amanda mentioned that they had visited a brother whom they had not seen for a long time, and it seems a conflict erupted there. Around 5:30, Anna was injured and collapsed on the sidewalk. After receiving the call, the medics quickly arrived at the scene. They found Anna lying on the asphalt in a pool of her own blood, while Amanda was not nearby. Anna had lost a large amount of blood, putting her life at risk, so urgent action was required. The police also responded and reached the scene after the ambulance. Anna was on the ground, seriously injured, bleeding, but still alive, with a deep wound in her chest. The medics promptly placed her in the ambulance and administered first aid during the ride. The police hoped Anna could identify her attacker, but she lost consciousness in the ambulance due to severe blood loss and was immediately taken to a medical center. On the way to the hospital, doctors tried to keep Anna alive. However, less than an hour later, at 6:20, the medical center staff pronounced her dead, unable to save her. This news was a devastating shock for her family. Suddenly, overnight, Anna, a mother of 3 children, was gone because of a violent act. The motive behind this senseless act was completely unclear. Anna was kind-hearted, empathetic, and had no legal issues or criminal history. Was she the victim of a random or intentional crime, and should the investigation focus on those around her to find the killer? The investigators quickly noticed that Anna's belongings, such as her money and mobile phone, were left untouched, suggesting she was not robbed. The violent nature of the incident indicated it was personal. Police began questioning neighbors, but they confirmed that Amanda's account of Anna arguing with her cousin was untrue. Several witnesses reported hearing only Anna and Amanda arguing loudly, with no men's voices present. This went on for a considerable time, until the arguments stopped and the medics arrived. The police detectives came to Amanda's apartment to gather information. She had called the emergency number and was able to provide valuable information and an explanation of the argument. Amanda confirmed that she had argued with Anna that night, but she went home after the argument ended. Then something unexpected happened. Someone attacked Anna, but Amanda didn't see the attack. When she returned, she found Anna bleeding. When it was reported that Anna had died, Amanda showed no emotion. This might have been due to nervousness or exhaustion, but it caught the police's attention. Even though Amanda received the news of Anna's death with an odd calm, it was something else that caught the police's attention. What really intrigued the detectives were the bloodstains on Amanda's clothes. Additionally, her face had visible scratches and there was dried blood on her head. Her hands were covered in injuries typical of defensive actions, like cuts, suggesting she might have tried to take a knife from someone. The police also found several bloody footprints that went Anna's body on the street to the building's door, up the stairs, and reached the apartment where Amanda and Anna spent the night. At first, when investigators requested to enter the apartment, Amanda was hesitant to let them in because she was frightened and tried to persuade the officers that her injuries were accidental. However, the situation was too suspicious to accept her explanation. Ultimately, Amanda allowed the police to enter without requiring a warrant. At the apartment, they also discovered traces of blood. In the kitchen, they found a large carving knife in the sink, covered in dried blood. Detectives saw this as clear evidence implicating Amanda in Anna's death. She was promptly arrested and brought to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Amanda provided investigators with 3 different accounts of how Anna might have died. In the first account, Amanda claimed she had no idea what happened to Anna, stating that she found Anna already injured on the street. Amanda didn't notice any suspicious people or vehicles, leaving her completely baffled by the incident. Amanda thought that Anna would not have an enemy capable of such harm, so she speculated that her cousin might be involved. She recalled that Anna was conscious at the time but had lost a big amount of blood and was disoriented. Amanda got blood on herself while trying to help Anna and went into shock before entering the apartment, which seemed unconvincing. Additionally, Amanda didn't mention defensive wounds from a sharp object, and the bloody knife found in the kitchen was puzzling. Upon realizing that the police thought her story was a lie, Amanda attempted to revise her story. It's important to note that Amanda was very intoxicated, making it challenging for detectives to follow her narrative. Her testimony was confused and contradictory. Despite this, she offered a revised version of the incident that evening. They were at their cousin's house drinking. As morning approached, Anna drank too much and felt unwell, so she decided to order a taxi. When the car arrived, she said goodbye and left, but no one confirmed that she got into the car. After which Amanda decided to head home. On her way, she discovered Anna injured on the street. Anna had a severe chest wound and was bleeding heavily, but she couldn't explain what had happened. Amanda quickly called an ambulance and notified the police. The detectives attempted to reach the cousin who owned the apartment to verify Amanda's story. However, at the time, this was never done. Realizing her difficult position, Amanda desperately offered a third version of events. She confessed that while they were drinking, a fight broke out between she and Anna. Under the influence of alcohol, Anna lost control and punched she in the face. Although Amanda was momentarily disoriented, but she quickly regained her senses. She recalled feeling furious after Anna hit her, but then she experienced a memory lapse. Amanda intended to enter the apartment to cool down, but moments later, she found herself standing on the street in front of Anna, person who is bleeding. According to Amanda, she doesn't remember what happened during this time. The latest and most credible version of events is that during this time, she went into the apartment and took a kitchen knife. The conflict had subsided by then, although no one witnessed the incident, but all evidence suggests that Anna was killed. When Amanda saw Anna in that state, she went back to the apartment to grab a cell phone and call emergency services. During this time, she tossed a knife into the kitchen sink. She contacted the medics but stayed in the apartment, overwhelmed by shock. Sadly, Anna's injury was too severe, and she passed away. This tragedy deeply affected the Shi family. The news about the incident became a main topic in the media, especially within their local community. Many interviews were conducted, and most people found it hard to believe that such a tragedy could occur between them. Anna and Amanda's sisters were known to be so close, to the point that few can remember any petty quarrel between them. During this time, Amanda was arrested and sent to the county correctional center to await her murder trial. Her lawyer claimed the crime was accidental and argued that Amanda should be released on bail and placed under house arrest to care for her newborn daughter. However, the judge denied this request because of the crime's severity. Amanda was denied bail as she was deemed too dangerous for society. Concerns were raised about her emotional state. So psychiatrists frequently evaluated her. They found no mental disorders, deeming her sane and fit to stand trial. During this time, investigators thoroughly verified all the information provided. It was confirmed that Anna and Amanda did indeed spend time with cousin, who was eventually located and able to testify as a key witness. Although some neighbors heard arguments and the sounds of a struggle, no one witnessed the actual attack. Amanda continued to claim that she could not remember what happened. Cousin confirmed that a quarrel occurred between Anna and Amanda that night, but it ended, and he did not see any attack between them. The cousin stated that then Anna and Amanda had calmed down, and everything seemed normal. He never expected that Anna and Amanda, who had been so close since childhood, to be involved in something as unthinkable as a stabbing. The cousin confirmed that before things settled down, Anna and Amanda did get into a fight. This might explain the scratches on Amanda's hands and face, as well as more serious defensive wounds, deep cuts on her hands, suggesting they fought by a knife. However, the cousin did not know the reason for the sisters' fight. In September 2019, Amanda gave the investigators her final account of events to the best of her memory. She recalled having a fight with Anna while they were at their cousin's apartment, but claimed she was too drunk to remember the cause of the conflict. Amanda explained that at one point, she lost of awareness, and when she regained awareness, she found herself standing over Anna, holding a bloody knife. She noticed the bleeding was severe and worried that she might have been responsible. Feeling overwhelmed, Amanda said she left Anna in the street and fled. She confessed that she would never have acted this way if not for being intoxicated. Amanda, a young mother, recognized there was no excuse for her actions and expressed deep regret, but she stressed that the murder was accidental. The prosecution was certain that Amanda was not being entirely honest and that the attack was intentional. They believed that an argument led to Anna's death. Detectives suspected that Amanda had a motive, thinking she had held a long-standing grudge against Anna. In the end, her intoxication turned this anger into aggression. The investigators were trying to confirm if the act was premeditated. The police suspect that a man, who both sisters were attracted to, was involved in the incident, as he seemed to be the most likely cause of the conflict between them. Amanda explained this because she didn't want her loved ones to know that the death of Anna was due to such a trivial reason. This thing were confirmed by an anonymous source. One day, a man who wished to remain unnamed called the police station. He claimed that jealousy was the motive behind the cruel act against Anna. Anna's aunt also confirmed this thing. She shared the story with both the media and the police. According to her, the conflict arose because of Anna's husband. It was revealed that Amanda had secretly been in love with him for a long time. She envied Anna, and even used her resemblance to Anna to have sexual relations with him. When Anna discovered this, she was furious and accused Amanda of betrayal. The aunt mentioned that Amanda had often bragged that neither Anna nor her husband had any idea about the deception. This seemed especially horrific in light of the murder, giving the police strong reasons to suspect a premeditated act driven by jealousy. Even so, Amanda's family provided her with strong support. Her mother attended every hearing and was moved every time. Her mother realized that one daughter was already lost forever, and Amanda faced the possibility of spending her life in prison, which filled her with sorrow. Other relatives were also consistently present at the hearings, repeatedly pleading with the judge for leniency. They highlighted that Amanda had recently given birth, and her child risked growing up without a caring mother. In addition, the family also opposes the theory that the motive for the attack was a love triangle. Except for an aunt who gave conflicting testimony about affairs, no one had heard such rumors about Amanda's personal life. Everyone saw how warm and close the relationship between Anna and Amanda was. Even during the last party, they seemed very friendly. It was unlikely that they would have maintained such a close connection after the betrayal. Amanda's younger sister, named Monica, who was 19 at the time of the trial, claimed that Anna and Amanda had a very strong bond. She was sure there couldn't be any love triangles in their lives. Both sisters were decent and wouldn't get involved in something like that. Monica said that Anna had been in a long-term relationship with a man named Luis Rivera, who was also her husband. During that time, Amanda also had a boyfriend, with whom she had a child, and they were planning to get married. Therefore, there was no reason for Amanda to date Anna's boyfriend secretly. Monica added that Amanda called her as soon as the tragic incident happened. Amanda cried a lot during the phone call, insisting she did not remember anything. Monica believed that, in her current state, Amanda would be honest and confess if she were guilty. Consequently, she dismissed the prosecutor's suggestion that Amanda was involved with Anna's husband. Anna's husband also denied having any affair with Amanda's, stating that he could easily differentiate them and such deception was impossible. The prosecution continued to question Amanda, they trying to understand the motive behind the massacre, but they couldn't get any more information. Despite the murder, the entire Ramirez family and those connected to Amanda dismissed the idea of a love triangle as fiction. They were convinced that the case materials were fabricated by the police to treat the crime as a premeditated attack, which would mean imprisoning Amanda for a longer time. Anna's husband, Luis, firmly denied the aunt's statements. However, the prosecution continued with this theory, suggesting that Luis was unaware of being manipulated. The accusation of infidelity was central to the prosecution's strategy, which deeply enraged the entire Ramirez family. Amanda's lawyer mentioned that the incident might not be solely related to alcohol intoxication that night. Anna and Amanda drank a lot, but the aggression was due to postpartum depression. Amanda faced emotional issues after her pregnancy and struggled to manage them. Her lawyer explained that her mental state, along with excessive alcohol consumption, triggered an episode of uncontrollable aggression. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough evidence to support this claim. A psychiatric evaluation revealed that Amanda was fully aware of her actions. The tears of the mother and the pleas of the sisters had a positive impact. In November 2019, Amanda reached a deal with the prosecution. This deal resolved the controversy surrounding her motive and spared her family the ordeal of a lengthy trial. In the end, Amanda received a sentence of only 6 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 5 years. During the sentencing hearing, Amanda was overcome with emotion, breaking down in tears and trembling. She acknowledged that her actions were inexcusable, expressing remorse to those present. For Amanda, the most severe punishment was the pain of loss she would feel for the rest of her life. Amanda asked for forgiveness. Although inconsolable, but the family said they held no grudges and considered the punishment fair. Furthermore, Amanda's mother and younger sister announced they would continue to support she and her children until her release. Anna's mother took responsibility and custody of Anna's children. All the children went to live with their grandmother. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Deborah Jeter. Deborah Jeter was born in 1976 in Georgia, USA. She was raised in a loving family and since childhood had a passion for helping people. When it came time to choose a career, Deborah decided to become a nurse without hesitation. She enrolled in a local college and pursued her nursing education. Alongside her studies, Deborah also focuses on building relationships. Deborah's boyfriend is a young man named Lester Jeter. They began a romantic relationship, and later both decided to move forward with married life. After marriage, they had 2 children. Their first child, named Kern, a year later, they had a second child. Because of their close age gap, the siblings were very close and did everything together. After graduating from college, Deborah to work part-time as an anatomy and physiology teacher. She also joined an exchange program as a licensed professional nurse. From an early age, Deborah's daughters began experiencing problems. Deborah often shows aggression towards her children and sometimes she has no control over her behavior. In 2004, she was accused of physically assaulting her eldest daughter, Kirsten, during a quarrel. However, this was the first and only incident of such behavior, so the charges were eventually dropped. As a result of this incident, Deborah was briefly hospitalized in a psychiatric facility and then underwent rehabilitation. She was diagnosed with several disorders, which were the cause of her depression. The experts concluded that Deborah's unusual behavior was linked to her mental disorders. The doctors reported that she managed to get these issues under control after receiving therapy. However, some of Deborah's neighbors believe she is still having difficulty controlling her behavior. Her frequent aggressive outbursts affected her husband and children, and she often acted impulsively. She would yell over anything, which was alarming. The situation seemed serious, as the police were repeatedly called to her house. However, every time the officers arrived, she would calm down. After the incident with Kirsten, Deborah avoided contact with the children. Each time, when the patrol officers would arrive, find nothing amiss, and leave after advising her to remain quiet and calm. Although there were numerous complaints about her loud and hot-tempered behavior, the officers felt powerless to intervene. This situation took a toll on her family, who bore the brunt of her aggression. Deborah's mental health issues seemed to get worse, leading to high tensions. Deborah's husband, Lester, struggled to endure the constant shouting and arguments. By 2009, the situation had become unbearable. In May, Lester decided to end the relationship and filed for divorce. Deborah was devastated. It seemed she genuinely loved her husband, but due to her mental health difficulty, so she was unable to control her behavior. Lester's decision to divorce was a significant shock for Deborah. She repeatedly tried to convince her husband to heal their relationship and discuss their issues. However, Lester was so frustrated with Deborah's behavior that he rejected any talks. Lester openly told his wife that their family had no future and he would never come back. He also mentioned that he intended not only to end the marriage but also to seek custody of the children. Lester was genuinely concerned that his wife might lose control when he wasn't around their daughters, fearing she might harm them. His worries were justified as Deborah's behavior became increasingly erratic. Lester worries about the safety and well-being of his two daughters, Kelsey and Kirsten, but he cannot predict the tragic fate that will befall them. That same month, after Lester declared his intention to divorce, Deborah attempted to end her life. She ingested a lethal dose of antidepressants, but was saved by the doctor's quick response. The most distressing aspect of this incident was that Deborah did this in front of her daughters, making her husband even more worried about her mental health. He feared that the stress of the divorce could worsen Deborah's illnesses. Unfortunately, resolving the legal issues of divorce is time-consuming, making the divorce process complicated and difficult. Nevertheless, Lester was determined to proceed with the divorce to protect the children from their unstable mother. Deborah's mental health issues clearly worsened after her divorce proceedings started. She and her children moved in with her mother. Naturally, Deborah suffered the most, but her frequent outbursts of anger and constant aggression also affected the children. Lester wanted to resolve all the issues quickly to minimize the trauma for the girls. Unfortunately, time was not on his side. Deborah attempted to end her life, which was a shock for the children. They couldn't understand their mother's behavior or the struggles she faced. Meanwhile, Deborah, at 30 years old, risked losing everything she had built with her husband over the years. Her world was falling apart, so it was no surprise that she was deeply shocked. Lester was determined to take action. He understood how serious Deborah's problems were and the danger she posed to herself and others. After Deborah's attempted to end her life, Lester insisted that her contact a psychiatric care center, believing she would receive professional help, an accurate diagnosis, and appropriate treatment there. Deborah took his advice and was admitted on May 22, which came as a great relief to Lester. During her treatment, the children stayed with their father, Lester. He also attempted to obtain a restraining order to keep the children away from their mother. During this time, Lester decided that he should seek full custody of both children. He believed Deborah was unable to control herself and tried his best to ensure the children's safety. Lester has repeatedly applied to court to limit Deborah's meeting in contact with the two girls Kirsten and Kelsey. It was expected that she would not be discharged from the hospital after just 2 weeks. Lester believes that such a short period of treatment was not enough for Deborah to control her behavior, so she remains a threat to her children. However, she was discharged on June 4. By this time, Deborah had not succeeded in gaining full custody, despite her efforts. The judge denied issuing a restraining order to limit Deborah's communication with her daughters, considering it excessive. The judge believed the children were not in danger because she had received treatment. A temporary arrangement was made where Deborah would have custody of the children on weekends, while Lester would care for them on weekdays. The day after the custody hearing, on a Friday, June 5, 2009, Deborah planned to pick up the kids around 6 p.m. Although Lester doesn't want to be away from his daughters, he had to comply with the court orders. He had no choice but to hand the children over to Deborah when she arrived to take them for the weekend. Kirsten and Kelsey were happy to see their mother despite her previous rejections. Kirsten and Kelsey genuinely loved her, missed her, and enjoyed spending time with her when she was in a good mood. The eldest daughter, Kirsten, even posted on social media that she would see her mom the next day and expressed her excitement. However, they had no idea of the horrors that awaited. It seemed like a long-anticipated reunion, and Deborah was also eager to see her daughters. During a conversation with Lester, she mentioned that she had a big surprise planned for the children. In reality, a terrible plan had formed in Deborah's mind, which she intended to carry out. Instead of going home, Deborah drove with the children for a while and arrived at an abandoned house near Highway 77. It was a strange and eerie place to take the children. But the girls trusted their mother and followed her, eagerly anticipating the promised surprise. They were impatiently waiting for their mother to organize a special event for them. However, after they entered the house, Deborah pulled out a weapon. Kelsey quickly realized what was happening, but it was too late. She managed to shout to Kirsten to run away. However, Kirsten didn't listen. She charged at their mother, trying to take the knife to protect Kirsten. The struggle was unequal. Deborah stabbed her youngest daughter Kelsey several times. Kelsey was already down, and the eldest daughter Kirsten was desperately fighting with their mother. She pleaded for her to stop, shouting, "This is madness," but Deborah seemed oblivious, ignoring her pleas. Having dealt with Kelsey, Deborah turned on Kirsten, who tried to escape. Deborah struck her, but the wounds were not as deep. The girl began to bleed heavily. Despite this, she clung to life, begging her mother to stop and spare her. Kirsten expressed her desire to live, and perhaps this plea helped Deborah finally regain her senses. She halted the attack and began pacing nervously around the rooms of the abandoned house. In a state of shock, Deborah called the rescue service and confessed that she had killed her child, saying multiple times that she had done so and apologized for her actions. When asked for her location, she informed them that she was in an abandoned house on Highway 77 and mentioned that one of the children was still alive, urging them to hurry and call an ambulance to save the one who wasn't dead. The dispatcher inquired about her name, but Deborah refused to disclose it, stating that she would not reveal her identity. She was pacing around the house, while Kirsten was still alive and pleading for help. Deborah was overwhelmed and couldn't explain what had happened. She asked the dispatcher not to shoot her, stressing that she didn't have a gun. She gave precise directions to the location so law enforcement and medics could find the abandoned house where she had harmed Kirsten and Kelsey. Deborah said one of the girls was already dead, and the other was barely hanging on, as she had cut her throat and was bleeding. She urged them to arrive as quickly as possible, otherwise, the girls' chances of survival were slim. Deborah spoke calmly to the dispatcher, despite being a bit excited. Her voice was generally calm and cold. The dispatcher found Deborah's behavior strange and began to suspect that she had no control over the situation. While waiting for law enforcement, Deborah alternated between calmness and shouting nervously, even insulting the dispatcher. The operator remained composed, continuing the conversation to prevent Deborah from doing anything reckless. Deborah mentioned that if they didn't hurry, she might lose control and harm her second child. She said this completely calmly and without any emotion. The dispatcher realized the situation was extremely serious and that Deborah was unstable. Deborah, who had mental health issues, spoke about her daughters as if they were objects, one whom she has eliminated from her life, while the other is in danger. However, this did not particularly bother Deborah, as she was mainly concerned about her own safety. Deborah repeatedly asked the dispatcher to ensure that the police wouldn't shoot her when they arrived. Although she understood the seriousness of the crime, her focus was on her own well-being, even though one of her daughters is dead, and the other daughter is barely alive. This thing was inconsistent with recent when she tried to end her life, which occurred shortly before the tragedy. However, Deborah clearly did not want to suffer. But is she ready to take responsibility for her actions? The police arrived at the scene and found Deborah on the street, still talking on the phone. She raised her hands to show she had dropped the knife and was unarmed. She repeatedly told the officers not to shoot her, insisting she had no weapons, was not dangerous, and would not attack. Deborah directed the police to an abandoned house where 2 bloody bodies were found inside. Although Deborah was a nurse, she did not attempt to help the children. While speaking to the dispatcher, she walked around the abandoned house and then went outside to avoid seeing the girls' bodies. Deborah wandered around the courtyard while Kirsten sat in blood next to her dead younger sister, Kelsey. Deborah's car was in the garage of the abandoned house, with a small knife on the car roof, the same knife she used to commit the massacre. The police quickly found the knife and arrested Deborah, placing her under constant surveillance due to concerns she might try to harm herself. Inside the abandoned building, officers encountered a horrifying scene. They discovered two girls. One of them, Kelsey, was in the bathroom, covered in blood. Because of her injuries, she died at that moment, having bled out in less than a minute. Kelsey was only 12 years old, and her mother had stabbed her with such force that she succumbed to the bleeding almost instantly. It's hard to imagine what Kirsten went through. She was found with similar injuries in the bedroom, but was still alive when rescuers arrived. Kirsten lay in a pool of her own blood, her eyes indifferent, indicating she had lost a big amount of blood. Quick action was crucial to save her life. Her throat was cut from right to left, damaging her airways and one of the main arteries. Surprisingly, her mother, Deborah, a nurse, attempted to clamp the wound to stop the bleeding while waiting for the medics. This may increase her chances of survival. In an emergency situation, the doctors rushed Kirsten out of the abandoned house and took her to Parkland Hospital in Dallas. They performed an emergency operation and battled to save her life for hours. Miraculously, the girl survived. After 4 days, Kirsten was moved from intensive care to a regular ward. Her recovery was incredible, especially since it was initially thought she wouldn't make it. However, her challenges were far from over. Though she narrowly escaped death, a more troubling fact was that she and her sister were found in that abandoned house, having been attacked by their own mother. It's hard to comprehend the extent of the post-traumatic shock Kirsten experienced. During the summer, she was recovering from the operation, trying to come to terms with the fact that her younger sister Kelsey is dead and the fact that her mother was a murderer. At the time of the crime, Deborah lived with her mother in the small town of Malacca, Texas, which had a population of just 2,000 people. Investigators reviewed Deborah's cell phone records and discovered that after taking the children from their father, Deborah headed to Malakoff. There, she seemed to wander along the roads for a while, then she eventually stopping the abandoned house. Detectives believe Deborah was searching for a place to harm the children. Examining the actions of people with mental disorders is difficult, yet the incident in the abandoned house provides disturbing things into Deborah's motives. When life falls apart, depression and mental issues can lead some women to feel that ending their lives is the only option. In many cases, they kill their children first, believing it to be a merciful act. Under the strain of mental illness, a mother may think that her family's collapse will doom her children to endless suffering. In this mindset, she views murder as a way to free them from pain and hardship. Often, these women then take their own lives. In this situation, it's evident that Deborah had no intention of dying. She was frightened and did not harm herself, even fearing that the police might shoot her, showing that she valued her life. The murders of Kirsten and Kelsey were clearly motivated by revenge, intended to hurt Lester extreme pain. She aimed to deliver a cunning and cruel blow to him. The incident was truly alarming. Kirsten and Kelsey's father, Lester, tried to give this case a big push to draw attention to the trial, literally the day after the judge refused to issue a restraining order against Deborah. Instead, the judge agreed at the hearing that she would have custody of her daughter by the end of the week. This decision later raised many questions about whether the judge considered this decision reckless. Unfortunately, Lester's worst fears were confirmed. Deborah killed Kelsey and almost took the life of Kirsten. Lester tried his best to convince the judge that his daughters were in mortal danger. Under no circumstances were they allowed to see Deborah unsupervised. However, the judge maintained that their main goal is to strengthen and unite families, encourage parents to cooperate with each other, to ensure children receive love from both parents. This decision ultimately led to devastating consequences, but the judge's actions were still deemed legal, despite the tragedy that followed. the district attorney stated that it's not fair to blame only the judge for this situation. According to him, responsibility belongs to many parties: the doctors who allowed Deborah to leave the hospital, Lester, along with Deborah. Deborah was expected to face severe punishment due to her past actions. She had previously shown anger and aggression towards her children, including attempting to harm Kirsten. However, the decision to lift the prohibition order on her is still controversial and raises many questions. Generally, in 99% of cases, shared custody benefits children, allowing both parents to support, love, and communicate with them, fostering healthy development. Yet, this approach fails when a parent has serious mental health issues. Child Protection Services claim they were unaware of Deborah's behavior. Staff stated that if they had known about her try to end her life in front of the children, she would never have been allowed unsupervised contact. From that point on, people also focused on the possibility that the family had clearly become victims of leniency on the part of the mental hospital and the justice system. However, this could not be proven. It was known that Deborah had been in and out of such institutions multiple times, with discharges that came too soon. A comprehensive diagnosis typically requires at least 3 months of testing and observation. Treatment and medication may be prescribed based on test results, but their effectiveness is not guaranteed. Doctors then closely monitor the patient's condition, behavioral changes, and the progression of the disease, adjusting medication as needed. This process can take up to a month. And discharge is only considered after a stable improvement in the patient's condition. However, Deborah was released after just a few weeks, suggesting that she did not undergo the full range of required examinations and tests. Deborah promised Lester that she would take Kirsten and Kelsey out and give them a surprise. She wanted to plan a fun evening with activities like singing and reading. However, just 4 hours later, she called emergency services and confessed to killing her children. Her trial lasted a year, and on May 27, 2010, Deborah Jeter was formally charged with aggravated murder and attempted murder. Throughout the proceedings, Deborah was held in prison due to the high bail amount of $1, which was unaffordable and reflected the severity of the crime. As a result, she remained behind bars until the start of her trial. Deborah's defense team proposed a deal to the prosecution due to the complexity and sensitive nature of the case. Prosecutors fear that Deborah's mental illness could lead to her being released without jail time. Furthermore, a full trial would require Kirsten, Deborah's daughter who had miraculously survived her mother's attack, to testify in court. To spare Kirsten the trauma of reliving the horrific incident, Deborah agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge, hoping to avoid the death penalty under Texas law. About a year after the murder, Lester and Kirsten visited Deborah in prison. Deborah explained that, due to the turmoil in her life at the time, so she genuinely believed killing her youngest daughter Kelsey was the only way to protect her children from future suffering. She thought that the family's breakup would cause everyone immense pain and, in her mentally unstable state, she saw the murder as the only solution, a twisted form of salvation. Deborah expressed regret about what happened, but she admitted that she still hates Lester and blames him for the tragedy, and she will never forgive him. Kirsten reminisced warmly about the past with her mother. They talked calmly and even laughed together. This was the last time Deborah could peacefully meet with her loved ones. Afterward, she was moved to another prison and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In her situation, this is seen as a lenient punishment because, without admitting guilt, she could have faced the death penalty. Lester was deeply shocked by the incidents, but inspired by his daughter, he decided to move forward. In 2015, he rebuilt his life, remarried, and he and Kirsten removed their social media profiles. Eventually, Kirsten reactivated her account but set it to private. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Rachel McLean. Rachel McLean returned home to Blackpool, UK, for the summer of 1990. She was 18 years old and had just finished her first year at Oxford. Rachel was very busy with her studies and spent all her free time studying. She had a healthy lifestyle and played sports. Rachel had many friends and loved heavy metal music. She joined a local charity, where she worked during the summer. While on a day off, Rachel was relaxing with friends at a local club when she met a bartender named John Turner, who had long brown hair. John was from Nottingham and had returned to Blackpool for the summer. Rachel found him attractive and easy to talk to, so they quickly became interested in each other. That night, they chatted. John attended Rachel's 19th birthday party. After the party, they had a passionate night together. According to John, their relationship continued to develop. However, at the end of the summer, Rachel had to return to Oxford, and John returned to Nottingham. The two cities were just over 2 hours' drive apart, so they could easily visit each other. They spent weekends together and kept in touch by letter and phone during the week. John wrote Rachel long love letters, which she enjoyed. John Turner was born in HMP, but as a child he moved to New Zealand with his parents and settled in a city called Bath. The family lived in 2 countries before John returned to the UK to study at King's College. During his time there, he won the hearts of both students and teachers. He hosted a show on the local college radio station twice a week and was a talented athlete on the soccer team. Rachel McLean was a promising student. Her literature teacher at college admired her achievements. Rachel started college in the same year as John. On Christmas, Rachel invited John to meet her parents and they had a nice evening together. Rachel's parents were very happy with her choice, finding John intelligent, good-looking and confident. John became increasingly infatuated with Rachel but was saddened by the distance between them. During this time, she moved into a student apartment on the first floor of the school with 4 other students. John felt anxious and jealous because one of her neighbors was a man and the boys often visited her house. To cope, he wrote and called her constantly. However, Rachel was very busy with work and study. Since there were no mobile phones in those days, they could only communicate by landline. She would often come home at the end of the evening, exhausted, and go straight to bed. She did not have the opportunity to communicate with John regularly. His dissatisfaction increased with each missed call and he became increasingly jealous. His possessiveness became evident during this time and he complained to her, which began to annoy Rachel. On February 11th, she sent him a Valentine's card, calling him the only love of her life. However, around that time, she wrote in her diary about her lover in very unflattering terms. It seemed that she had doubts about whether John was the person she could spend the rest of her life with. On Valentine's Day, John proposed to her, but she unexpectedly refused, which shocked him. She explained that she was not ready. John said that he understood and would wait. They continued their relationship, calling each other occasionally and rarely seeing each other. 2 months later, in April, they planned to spend the Easter holidays together. John went to Blackpool again on Saturday, and Rachel's mother took her back to Oxford because she had important school matters to attend to on Sunday. They planned to have a quiet day together at her student flat, as it was their last weekend before Rachel's exams. Rachel spent a lot of time preparing for her exams. While she was studying, her boyfriend was watching football in the living room because he was a Nottingham fan. That weekend, the team played in the FA Cup semi-finals, so the next day John got on the train and returned to Nottingham. There was no one in the student flat all week because the young people had gone home for the holidays. Everyone wanted to spend time with their loved ones because they wouldn't have the chance until the end of the year. By Monday, her roommates began to return, eager to see Rachel and hear about her weekend. However, Rachel was missing. Her room was empty, the windows were open, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. The students assumed she was busy with other activities. On Wednesday, her boyfriend, John, tried to call her, but she did not answer. They had planned to stay in touch, but Rachel did not return his calls. John assumed that she was busy and did not want to bother her. However, after 2 days of silence, which was unusual since their relationship had only recently improved, John began to worry. He called again, but still received no response. The next day, he tried again, but was unsuccessful. There was no social media at the time, so John left a message on her answering machine. But she remained silent. He also sent her a letter by regular mail, which he sent as soon as he got home. The letter arrived in New Mexico on Thursday, and John thanked Rachel for a wonderful weekend and wished her luck with her exams. On April 19, 1991, 19-year-old Rachel failed to show up for her exam, which was especially worrying because she had been studying hard and the exam was extremely important to her. When the exam proctors tried to contact her, they were unsuccessful. Her parents also had no idea where she was, prompting them to report her missing to the police. The Oxford police were initially skeptical. They received dozens of missing student reports each month because parents went to the police station after parties. In 99% of cases, teens sobered up from drinking and returned to school within 24 hours. But that was not the case. This diligent student had been missing for days and had not been heard from at all. None of her friends knew where she was, so the police became interested in what had happened. They immediately went to the apartment where Rachel had gone missing. Detective Susie Krug was looking for information about the students who had been in the same room as Rachel. Victoria Clare, Margaret Smith, Sarah Hume and John Forby. The friends immediately pointed to Rachel's boyfriend, who was annoying everyone with his jealousy. They showed a letter he had sent from Nottingham around the time Rachel went missing. The neighbors also confirmed that John Turner was the last person Rachel had been in contact with. The room they checked showed no signs of forced entry, robbery, struggle, or blood. Everything was in its place. The police found Rachel's diary, which might contain important clues. The police began to study the contents of the diary. They knew that John was possessive and jealous of his girlfriend, wanting to know her whereabouts and presence at all times. This behavior gradually began to annoy Rachel. Their conflicts often arose over this issue. On April 22, police met with John Turner. 22. During the conversation, John expressed concern about his missing girlfriend. He was asked to describe his activities during the time Rachel went missing. John mentioned that they had a great weekend together and that everything was fine before they broke up. He said that he woke up early, showered, and that they had sex in the afternoon. After lunch, they went to Oxford Station together at around 4:15 p.m., taking a bus. They had a few hours before their train arrived, and while waiting, they bumped into a friend of Rachel's at around 5 p.m. The three of them went to a local coffee shop and had coffee. Rachel's friend was described as a dark-skinned man with long hair, wearing ripped jeans and a black jacket. He was similar in appearance to John, except for his dark skin. John admitted that he could not remember the man's name because they had just met and he did not expect to become friends with him. According to John, the man offered to drive Rachel home in his car. She agreed, and then John and Rachel said goodbye. John returned to Nottingham, while Rachel went with her friend to her apartment. However, John's story about the man was very suspicious. The police suspected that John was lying, and he quickly became the prime suspect in Rachel's disappearance, as she had been missing for a long time, leading to concerns that she might be dead or imprisoned. Urgent action was needed. First, it was important to learn more about the prime suspect, as he was the last known person to have had contact with Rachel, and his story about a black man needed further investigation. Rachel's disappearance left everyone baffled because none of her roommates or friends remembered her having such a friend. In order to gather more witnesses, the police shared information about the case. From the beginning, there was no reason to think that she had run away. The police first checked this possibility by talking to Rachel's family and friends. Rachel had no problems with her loved ones, friends, studies, or personal life. She was eagerly preparing for exams, which made it impossible for her to not attend. Rachel never complained about any problems, nor did she suffer from drug addiction or mental problems. People like her usually do not run away, and all of her belongings were left untouched. This allowed the police to rule out the possibility that she had run away on purpose. The police were skeptical of John's testimony and assigned a police officer to approach him and gain his trust. The officer's job was to observe John's reactions and behavior while updating him on the investigation. From the beginning, the officer suspected John of lying to them, noticing that he became nervous when talking about Rachel, despite his attempts to hide it. Despite these suspicions, a week of surveillance did not reveal any useful information to help the case. Meanwhile, the police were searching the neighborhood for witnesses, K-9 units were working with dogs, and divers were examining local waters. Several people remembered seeing John, but no one could confirm that he had left the house with Rachel. In addition, he had not been behaving suspiciously, so this witness's testimony did not add anything to the search. During this time, John continued to cooperate with the investigation. He even helped create a composite sketch of the man who, according to him, was supposed to drive Rachel back to her apartment. John believes this friend was responsible for her abduction. It has now been 2 weeks and police believe she is no longer alive. No ransom demands have been made, ruling out kidnapping as a motive. Search teams, including police, rescue workers, and volunteers, have scoured a large area around Oxford, including drains and boating holes, but their efforts have been in vain. The police examined Rachel's diary and discovered her true feelings for John, a disturbing mix of hatred and pity. She expressed that she was unable to confront him directly or leave because she was afraid. Rachel had no genuine feelings for John, and her Valentine's Day gestures were more like a duty than a genuine expression of love. She knew that John was unstable and prone to losing control when angry. Afraid to face this reality, she admitted that their closeness was harmful and needed to end. In stark contrast, John described their relationship as happy, often emphasizing their frequent sexual activity during interrogations. Meanwhile, Rachel wrote of her disgust for him but felt powerless to stop their closeness. The police believe he may have killed her after reading her diary and discovering her true feelings, but more evidence is needed to prove his guilt. John has been actively cooperating with the investigation. He has attended a press conference to draw public attention to the search for Rachel and to help reconstruct the last day he spent with her. John describes the events at the station, claiming that a stranger, whom he says was a dark-skinned friend of Rachel's, was involved in her disappearance. The plan is to closely monitor John's reactions and behavior during these events, as experienced journalists can identify inconsistencies in his story. Many people have noted that John's description of the dark-skinned guy closely matches his appearance, including his clothing, except for his skin color. It is as if he was trying to describe himself but changing his race. In addition, the public took note of John's strange reactions when asked if he thought Rachel was still alive. He vaguely stated, in his heart, he wanted to think so, which further aroused suspicion among the conference attendees. Throughout the conversation, the guy's smile never seemed to disappear. This event greatly promoted the investigation into Rachel's disappearance. Several random witnesses who were watching the press conference on television clearly remembered the events of the day the girl disappeared at the train station. They contacted the police, saying that only John was at the cafe at the station. There was no girl or anyone else with him. Among the witnesses was a man sitting at the next table. He noticed that John seemed very nervous while drinking coffee, constantly looking around and startled. According to this witness, at one point, John took out a piece of paper and started writing. Perhaps Rachel was no longer alive at that time, and John began writing the same letter he had sent immediately after arriving in Notting. All this was done to create an alibi for himself. It has been established that John and Rachel went to the station together by bus, although there were no cameras there at that time. However, during that time in the city, all passengers who boarded the bus and paid for their tickets were monitored by special electronic devices. It was impossible to ride without paying. When checked, it was discovered that Rachel had not paid for the trip, which showed that she was not with John and could not have been there that day. Therefore, John lied. The reason for his lie remains unclear, and it is still unknown where Rachel's body could be. Police suspected that her remains might still be in the student apartment or somewhere on campus. Surveillance cameras covered the area around the building, but none of them showed John carrying any large, suspicious items. Police requested a floor plan of the student dormitory and discovered that there were voids under the floorboards. Police returned to the apartment where Rachel had lived and removed the floorboards. There, they found her body tightly packed in a bag, only 20 centimeters high. The cold weather at the time slowed the body's decomposition. In addition, the space between floors was structurally well ventilated, so the decomposing body did not emit a foul odor and was not discovered until 19 days after her death. Because Rachel's body was so well preserved, the forensic expert was able to determine the circumstances of her death with a high degree of accuracy within an hour. John was then questioned by the police. Initially, he refused to answer police questions. However, the next day, he confessed to killing Rachel. He said that after watching a football match, he proposed to Rachel, hoping that she would accept, but she refused. The couple exchanged a few words. As a result, he lost his temper and attacked her. In his confession, John admitted that he did not understand why she refused to get engaged. She did not want to answer for a long time but finally admitted that she had been having an affair and that she was not sure that she was ready to commit her life to John. In response, he insulted her. Rachel tried to hit him, and after the slap, he lost control and pinned her down on the chair with his weight, preventing her from moving. John claimed that he did not remember what happened next. When he regained consciousness, he found himself sitting on a couch in front of Rachel's lifeless body. Forensic experts confirmed that Rachel had been strangled. There was a deep, thin mark on her neck, indicating the use of an object rather than hands. The tie Rachel had given him for Christmas was missing from the crime scene and from John's belongings. Believed to have been used to kill her. After a while, he decided to dispose of the body. Unable to get the body out of the building, he put it in a bag, removed the floorboards from Rachel's room, and stuffed the body into a small space. He then quietly reinstalled the floorboards. John then packed his things and headed to the bus station. While waiting for the train at a coffee shop, he wrote a letter to Rachel. In the letter, he thanked her for the weekend they spent together and mentioned a black man who was supposed to drive her home, which was a made-up story. He had invented this character to support the lie he had created. He also expressed concern for his girlfriend, who would be alone for several days. After sending the letter, he called her several times and left messages on her answering machine. John then wrote another letter, addressed to Rachel in New Mexico, saying that he had tried to call her several times during the week and was very worried, hoping she would call back soon. This deception allowed him to fool the police and the public for 19 days. Afterward, despite his confession, John Turner maintained his innocence. In December 1991, John claimed that his actions were in self-defense. He wanted to avoid a life sentence for premeditated murder, so he argued that the girl's death was accidental. Rachel was described as argumentative and unfaithful, often insulting John. John also stressed the humiliation he suffered at the hands of Rachel. He had erectile dysfunction due to the disease and claimed that she constantly criticized him for it. This was especially difficult during the outbreak when he was unable to have sex with her due to pain in his groin and abdomen. In court, his lawyer portrayed him as the victim. He was a caring man in love, dreamed of marrying Rachel and proposed to her twice, both times being rejected. Of course, all of this is not true, because judging by the diary entries, the girl was generally uncomfortable with intimate contact with John. There is no evidence that Rachel had any intrigue or relationship with anyone else. Rachel's close friends did not know about any other guy. Many believe that she made up the story of the affair to justify her quick breakup with John, but it is possible that she never actually said this, it was just his word. In the end, the jury did not believe John and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the right to parole. John's story does not end there. While serving his sentence, he developed a relationship with a 20-year-old woman who looked exactly like Rachel. She learned about him through a newspaper article and became interested, believing that he had been wrongly convicted. Despite being imprisoned, they began a romantic relationship. Lawyers continued to fight for John's release and maintained his innocence. In 2003, after 11 years behind bars, John was paroled. He returned to New Zealand, intending to start his life over. His girlfriend, whom he met while in prison, followed him to New Zealand to attend university in Whanganui, the city where John lived. Apparently, 11 years in prison did not benefit John because he then attacked and began strangling the new girl, who believed he was innocent. John was 49 at the time. Fortunately, the attack was not serious and the girl was able to escape without serious injury. According to several witnesses and victims, John had lost control of his temper several times in the 6 months leading up to the incident. It was clear that he had anger management issues. John often became jealous and turned small problems into big arguments, often insulting his partner in front of others. Some time after the initial incident, the situation recurred and he attacked her again. During this time, the couple were staying at a motel in the city of Whanganui. There, they argued again. John threw his girlfriend onto the bed, raised his fists and punched her in the face while holding her down with his weight. However, he regained his composure and left the room. A few hours later, the girl texted John, saying that she was ending the relationship. She said that he was dangerous and needed to attend an anger management program. In response, he flew into a rage again, returned to the motel and stormed into the room. He attacked her, tore her clothes off, demanded sex, hit her on the head several times and threatened to kill her. In 2018, the girl reported John to the police and he was charged with assault. He was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison. The sentence was relatively light because the conviction occurred in New Zealand. If the attack had happened in the UK, he would have faced a life sentence. Despite the attack, his new girlfriend told the media that she believes anger management is still an issue for John and that he needs help. She hopes he can control his anger and that they can rekindle their relationship, despite the mental and physical abuse he has inflicted on her. In court, she admitted that he had threatened to kill her if she tried to leave him, although she did not take the threat seriously. John has recently been released from prison, but his current situation is unknown.